Misty Mountains, half-orc reputation, minus 3,456 rival. Thud. Before the fire had a chance to spark, the half-orc king's health dropped to 0. His body crumpled silently to the ground. At the very moment of his death, the word "old enemy" on Levi's reputation interface flashed crimson, awakened like a dormant curse. The king is dead. No one knew which goblin screamed at first, but chaos erupted in an instant. Some wailed, some froze in panic, others trembled in fear, while a few desperate goblins picked up weapons, charging blindly in a frenzied attempt to drown their grief in violence. But it was useless. "Run!" Gandalf bellowed, already pushing forward through the mayhem. Levi slashed at the scattered mad goblins, fighting as he backed away. "Forward!" he shouted, gesturing with his sword as he covered the others. But then the goblins changed. As though struck by a collective realization, they stopped. The weight of the king's death settled over them, and then their gaze locked, unified, on Levi's group. Malice filled their eyes. Like a tide, goblins emerged from every crevice, rock walls, bridges, even ceilings, flooding every surface. Levi looked up. The entire cavern seemed to seethe with goblins. "This place is too open. I can't hold them off," Levi warned, already digging with a pickaxe, trying to carve a desperate tunnel. "Hurry! In here. We'll dig our way out." "Wait!" Gandalf grabbed a dwarf mid-leap. "There's no time. 13 dwarves, too many. Look there, Light. That should be the back entrance. Follow me. These cave goblins won't follow us in the sunlight." Without waiting for agreement, Gandalf took off. Levi gritted his teeth, stowed his pickaxe, and followed. "Where's Bilbo?" Levi glanced back, but didn't see the hobbit. Worry nagged at him. Boom! Thunder cracked. Lightning exploded ahead, clearing goblins in a blast. It wasn't as strong as before, but enough. The exit drew closer, the wind whispering in their ears. One by one, the dwarves spilled out into daylight. Gandalf was just behind them. Levi paused at the threshold, scanning the shadows, then dashed out. Whoosh! Sunlight blazed over them, blinding but beautiful. No one stopped running until the cave was far behind. "There's 13 dwarves," Gandalf counted quickly. "Wait. Where's Bilbo?" Silence. Earlier, inside the cave, Bilbo had trailed Gollum quietly all the way to the back exit. He could see daylight, but Gollum stood in the way. As Levi and the others neared, Gollum panicked and shrank behind a stone, too afraid to confront them. When they passed by, Bilbo wanted to shout, but hesitation stole his voice. They vanished. Gollum, relieved, turned to continue his hunt for the thief. Bilbo stepped backward, forced deeper into the cave again. Just then, a shadow returned. Gollum froze, curling into himself behind his rock. Bilbo recognized the figure. It was Levi. He scanned the cave entrance thoroughly. For a moment, Bilbo felt their eyes meet. He stepped forward. Wait! But Levi turned and left. Missed again, Bilbo thought. Alone, Bilbo drew his dagger. Gollum crouched nearby, unsuspecting, weak, and dangerous. I could kill him. In this. His blade hovered, but Gandalf's words echoed in his mind. True courage is not in knowing when to kill, but when to spare. Bilbo stared into Gollum's bulging eyes, then sighed, lowered his weapon, and shoved Gollum aside. Thief! Cursed thief! Gollum shrieked behind him, but Bilbo was already running into the woods, chasing after his companion's trail. Thorin was silent when Gandalf asked about Bilbo. He's probably gone back home, he said grimly. No, I haven't, came a small voice. Everyone turned. Bilbo had returned. Gandalf beamed. Bilbo, I don't think I've ever been so glad to see anyone. How'd you escape? Asked a curious dwarf. Bilbo froze for a moment, his hand instinctively touching his pocket. Should I tell them? He wondered, fingers brushing the cold, smooth surface of the ring. Just a trinket. Magical maybe, and not even mine. But why does it feel so hard to let go? Before he could decide, Gandalf interrupted. What matters is that he's back. No, Thorin said, standing tall. I want to know why you returned. Bilbo looked him in the eye. You doubt me. I do miss home, the gardens, the books, the warm fires. But you don't have that. You don't have a home. So, I'll help you get yours back. Silence. Then Gandalf smiled. Levi clapped a hand on Bilbo's shoulder in quiet approval. But something flickered. Through the stretch in Bilbo's pocket, Levi caught a glint, subtle yet sinister. The ring. His breath caught. An unseen presence whispered at the edge of his thoughts. Bewitched threes. The system flickered a warning. He clenched his fists. The feeling vanished. Corruption level, 0%. But a new stat had appeared. "What are you doing, Levi?" someone asked, watching him gulp from a mysterious iron bucket full of milk. "Thirsty," Levi said casually, but the unease lingered. No matter how much he drank, the corruption bar didn't disappear. This ring, it's truly cursed. He didn't look at it again. The glint faded. Elsewhere, Azig stood on a hill near the ruined orc town, his face twisted in rage. A goblin knelt before him, delivering news of defeat. The dwarves had escaped. The king was dead. Azig snarled, "Hunt them!" A wolf howls echoed across the hills. Gandalf looked up sharply. A white orc on a white warg led a pack of hunters, scores of them. "Run!" Gandalf yelled again. Without pause, the weary party fled once more, the howls at their heels. "Every day, always running," Levi muttered, sword gleaming in the dusk as he turned to fight. The wargs descended like a storm, but Levi stood like stone. Even as the golden apple's thin shield shattered and his armor dented, Levi held fast. His sword burned through flesh and fur. One hit, one corpse. Azig noticed the disruption and diverted. He left the dwarves and came for Levi, enemy. In the world Levi lived in, that word meant one thing, a fight to the death. No retreat, no mercy. Only when one side ceased to exist would the other rest. Levi never thought much of orcs, but to them, he was the nightmare, the enemy. "You and those damned dwarves. You killed the Orc King." Azig snarled, lifting a massive blackened warhammer as he stepped forward, his orc warriors roaring behind him. "You wear that title orc killer like an honor." Azig spat. "But do you think we fear you? You're wrong." Bang! With a casual swing, Azig's hammer shattered a tree beside him. The trunk snapped like dry bone. "I'll start with you," he growled. "Then I'll butcher the dwarves." Slowly, Levi's gaze flicked up to assess his foe. Azig was massive, easily over 2 meters, built like a mountain with muscle hardened by war. A rare breed, perhaps even beyond the strength of Saruman's future creations. Levi smirked. "Big words. Careful you don't throw out your back with that ego." He unsheathed his longsword. "Right back at you." Azig roared and charged. Clang! Steel met steel. The first collision was brutal. Azig's hammer slammed against Levi's sword with such force that it blew his guard wide open. Levi staggered back slightly, surprised by the raw power. For the first time, he felt the weight of being struck by a true heavy weapon. Azig grinned and capitalized on the opening. Thud! The hammer smashed into Levi's chest. Levi's breath hitched. The impact forced him back half a step. -1. He glanced at the HUD. A single point of damage, but it had broken through his defense. Not bad. For most warriors, that hit would have shattered ribs. But Levi's full netherite armor, enchanted to protection 4, shrugged off most of it. Swish! The moment his health refilled, Levi struck. His sword lashed out, sharp and fluid. His fighting style wasn't elegant. It was fast, brutal, efficient, sharpened by years of slaughtering orcs and wargs. His draw-slash-return technique was near inhuman in speed, an instinctive, bloody dance. But Azig wasn't just a brute. At the last second, he raised his mechanical left arm, blocking the blade with a metal fork. Then, wham! His hammer slammed into Levi's shield. The shield shuddered and entered a temporary cooldown. Azig roared in triumph, strutting before his army like a gladiator ready for victory. Cheers erupted among the orcs. Even the wargs growled approvingly. For a moment, the battlefield swelled with their bloodlust. But Levi's cold eyes swept across them. The moment their gazes met his, the cheers faded. Orcs hunched back, silent, afraid. They had seen what Levi could do. If Azog weren't here, they'd already be running. That was the power of a strong leader. The sky darkened. The sun dipped behind the mountains. Moonlight spilled across the land. The orcs straightened. The sunlight's weakening effect faded. Now was their time. Some of them, emboldened by the night and their master, dared to meet Levi's gaze. "You're finished," Azog bellowed, clashing with Levi again. Boom! Levi blocked the blow, but the hammer's force nearly made him stumble. His shield cooled again. Azog's strength was rising. "This is getting tedious," Levi muttered. "Can't believe I'm stuck with a raid boss." In games, bosses had boosted stats, extra health, absurd attack values. This wasn't a game, but Azog was exactly that kind of foe. A beast that could fight. But so could Levi. After the next block strike, Levi's playful edge vanished. He drew his sword back, and with blinding speed, struck again and again. His blade became a blur. Azog, massive though he was, began to falter. His parry slowed. His arms trembled. And Levi? He didn't get tired. Slash! Levi's sword carved a burning arc across Azog's chest. The flames surged. Azog howled in agony as his health plummeted. Desperate, Azog hurled his war hammer at Levi. Levi dodged. The hammer crashed into the dirt, but it bought Azog enough time. The surrounding orcs surged in, throwing themselves between Levi and their fallen leader. Like a meat wall, they blocked every swing. Levi hacked through them, ruthless, unstoppable. But it was just enough delay. By the time the last orc dropped, Azog had escaped, dragged by loyal warriors onto a massive white warg, far larger than the rest. The Pale Wolf King. Levi fired arrow after arrow. The beast dodged them all with shocking agility. Auto-aim will be really nice right now, he thought bitterly. The Wolf King snarled at him before vanishing into the night, Azog clinging to its back, wounded but alive. The remaining orcs scattered in a panic. Misty Mountain orc reputation -300. Current reputation -3,756. Levi squinted at the number. Something told him that once it dropped further, something would change. He dashed after them, but more wargs returned, forming a defensive circle around him. They didn't attack, merely held the perimeter, stalling him. Levi took one step forward. They stepped back. Suddenly, Levi brandished his sword. The nearest wolves shrieked and bolted like pups. "You've got guts, I'll give you that," Levi said to the remaining ones. "Too bad you're on the wrong side." Then he struck. Wolves scattered in terror. Title unlocked. Enemy of the warg. Levi resumed the chase. But after a few minutes, Azog was gone, swallowed by the wilderness. You can run, but not forever. Levi sheathed his sword. Azog's head would stay on his shoulders a bit longer. When Levi finally arrived at the cliff where the dwarves had gone, all he found was flames, a scorched battlefield. No sign of the dwarves. No Gandalf. No Bilbo. Only burning remains. "They left me," he muttered. Whoosh! A sudden wind swept over the cliff. Levi! A massive shadow rose from below. A giant eagle emerged, Gandalf riding on its back. "I've been waiting for you." Later, soaring above the cliffs, Levi sat cross-legged on the eagle's back beside Gandalf. "I thought you guys abandoned me," Levi said. "Not a chance," Gandalf replied, lighting his pipe. "They'd throw me over the cliff before leaving you behind." He exhaled slowly. "We were trapped. The wargs had us at the edge. The dwarves were exhausted, ready to fall. I bought us some time with magic and called in a favor." He nodded at the eagle, who chirped proudly. "These aren't just birds. They're proud, intelligent allies. Small magic, huh?" Levi arched a brow. Gandalf grinned. "Depends on your perspective." Levi leaned back, letting the wind whip past his hair. "Yeah, today was something else."
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
Near the Anduin Valley, Karrock. This was the farthest place the eagles were willing to fly to after consultation. They gently put everyone down and flew back to the eagle's nest. Levi didn't know what happened when he was away, but everyone looked intact, just a little tired. Bilbo, I once said that there is no place for you among us. That was the biggest mistake of my life. Thorin hugged Bilbo tightly. What happened? Levi asked Gandalf in a low voice. Thorin was besieged by wargs and almost died in the wolf's mouth. Bilbo rushed over to save him. I see. Luck may be a coincidence, but courage must be inevitable. Levi looked at Bilbo and glanced at his pocket again. This thing, maybe Bilbo holding it, is also part of the great movement, but no one is born to suffer, and no one must be tortured. However, it must be said that Bilbo's magic resistance is really strong. He was bewitched by the ring for a full 60 years and could give it up on his own initiative. If there is a way, it is not necessary to watch Bilbo being corrupted. Even if the problem of the slow corruption of the mind cannot be solved, it can be solved from the root. However, in this case, there will be a lot to do after this trip to the Lonely Mountain. After a short rest, the group walked down from the Car Rock and continued to move towards the Lonely Mountain. A few days later, on the other side of the valley, Gandalf stood on a high place, looking at the wargs and orcs everywhere in the jungle, on the plains, and on both sides of the river, frowning. They're almost all out. I dare say that there are thousands of scouts searching for us. A dwarf shouted below. It's almost out in full force. Old Gandalf frowned again when he heard this. His eyebrows have been in trouble these days. Roar! At this moment, a roar of a beast suddenly came from above, and everyone immediately picked up their weapons, only to see a giant bear looking down with bared teeth. Oh my God, it's so big. It's bigger than any bear I've ever seen. A dwarf said tremblingly. Plop! The giant bear pounced down suddenly, and Levi pretended to draw his sword. Wait! Gandalf hurriedly stopped it and stood between Levi and the giant bear. Bjorn, I know it's you. Calm down. I'm Gandalf the Grey, a companion of Radagast the Brown, and I know him very well. The giant bear stared at Gandalf, making his scalp numb. After a while, it took 2 steps back and stopped baring its teeth. Its huge body gradually shrank, its hair shrank, and its hands and feet became thinner. It turned into a human who was more than 2 meters tall. The dwarves were stunned and rubbed their eyes, thinking they were dreaming. This is the skin-changing tribe. They are born with the magic of transforming into beasts. Gandalf explained. Wizards, humans, halflings, and greedy dwarves. What are you doing near my territory? Bjorn looked down at everyone from a high position. When he saw Levi and Bilbo, his mood was relatively stable, but when his eyes swept over the dwarves, his brows frowned. We have no ill intentions. We are just passing by. Gandalf explained. The fate of the Skin Changers is very tragic. They were forced out of the mountains by the orcs and had to live in the valley. Most of the few remaining people were captured and tortured to death by the orcs. Now, there's probably only Bjorn left in the Skin Changers. Gandalf doesn't want him to fight with Levi, so as not to make the Skin Changers extinct. Okay, I believe you. Bjorn nodded. Although he didn't like dwarves and didn't like strangers very much, if they were companions in brown robes, he could still trust them. Gandalf breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, the Skin Changers were saved. What are you doing here? Gandalf asked again. I'm avoiding the army of orcs. They've been mad these past few days, wandering around. Even I don't dare to pass through them. Bjorn shook his head, also a little worried. The last time I saw so many orcs was when they tried to expand to the north of the valley, but now there's no one living there, and there's nothing to plunder. I really can't figure out why they're out this time. Gandalf glanced at Levi and smiled awkwardly. Levi spread his hands. This is not important. The main thing is that we have a common enemy, and we can deal with them together. In fact, we need some help, which will allow us to better deal with the orcs. Bjorn was silent for a while, looked at Gandalf, and then looked at the dwarves. Finally, his eyes stayed on Levi for a long time before he slowly nodded. The enemies of the orcs are my allies. Well, I can help you. I know a way to avoid the sight of the orcs. You can leave from there during the day. I will keep watch for you. That night, under the moonlight, a giant bear stood on the rock, looking around vigilantly. In the house, the group ate and drank well and slept soundly. In the distance, an orc reported, Chief, we found a giant bear on the rock. Do you want to? Although the bear looked strong, it didn't seem that strong in comparison. It could be dealt with by bringing a few more people. Don't pay attention to it. Go around it. There's no need to cause trouble for yourself. A small leader of the orc scouts gave an order. Our target is the group of dwarves, and that damned one. Speaking of this, the scout leader took a deep breath and shuddered when he thought of that figure. If you meet him, don't fight him directly. Come back to gather the army, and then we will kill him. Yes. The night passed quickly. After dawn, Bjorn took out the honey bread and drinks he made to entertain everyone, and then provided horses and pointed out the route so that the group could leave quickly. At the same time, the wandering orcs failed to find the target they wanted. After a few days, for various reasons, they gradually retreated and temporarily withdrew from this plain. On this day, at the gate of the forest, which is also the entrance to the kingdom of Mirkwood, all the horses provided by Bjorn were released, leaving only one led by Gandalf. This place has been tainted by the minions of evil, and the situation doesn't look good. Levi, can you please do me a favor? What? Gandalf came closer and whispered to Levi with his back to the crowd. I'm going to confirm one thing these days. Do you know the ringwraiths? I know a little. They are servants of Sauron. Shock! A shadow flashed in his pupils, and Bilbo suddenly glanced at Levi and scratched his head. Oh, no, Levi, don't mention his name directly. Gandalf had a headache. Although he lost the ring, Sauron was not dead yet. If he mentioned his name without certain measures, it would be vaguely sensed. Although it was okay to be sensed, and Sauron couldn't come over and beat people along the network cable, it was not a good thing after all. Many elves use "he who must not be named" as a nickname when referring to that person. Of course, this is not important. What I want to say is that I have to confirm whether the ringwraiths have been summoned again, and I need to travel a long way for this. Do you want me to go with you? No, I will do this. What I want to ask you for is, when I come back, can you go to Dol Guldur with me? Maybe there is something there, but there is more than just something. If I remember correctly, Sauron is there now. What? It's okay, I promised. When will you be back? Gandalf said a not-so-short time. Okay, see you then. Okay, if any of us arrive early, wait at the main gate for 3 days. Gandalf rode away and separated from the team again. Levi followed the expedition into the Mirkwood. Levi, what did Gandalf tell you? Bilbo asked curiously, and the dwarves beside him also pricked up their ears. The guys were quite curious about what Levi and Gandalf were mumbling on the side. However, although there were some things that could be said, they would not be able to understand them and would only be confused. He said that the Black Forest has been corrupted by evil forces and is very dangerous. We need to stay on the main road as much as possible, where it is relatively safe. Bilbo nodded seriously and replied, I see. I will pay attention. At the same time, as the expedition entered the Black Forest, in the Dol Guldur fortress, a dark shadow appeared from the high tower, overlooking the land full of shadows. Azek, the terrifying voice sounded from the pale orc's mind. Azek suddenly opened his eyes and gasped. He touched his chest twice and found that the huge scratch from the shoulder to the waist had completely healed, leaving only a long scar, indicating that he was indeed injured. He raised his head and looked up at the shadow on the high tower, calling his name. Subconsciously, Azeg felt angry, but after a closer look, he found that it was not the person he hated. That was the Dark Lord Sauron. Azeg, you lead the army and prepare to start a war. What about the dwarves? Azeg asked Sauron without bothering to look at the recovered wound. You promised me to let him die. If another half-orc dared to talk back like this, he might have died on the spot, but Azeg and Sauron were more of a cooperative relationship, and he had the qualifications to make demands. Obviously, Sauron had made some kind of promise, but at this moment he did not respond to this question, but forced Azeg to lead the army. Azeg was so angry that his chest kept rising and falling on the spot, but the situation was stronger than the orcs, and no matter how angry he was, he had to obey the order. In desperation, he had to call his son Bolger and let Bolger lead the team to continue to target the dwarves. As the son of Azeg, Bolger inherited Azeg's physique very well. He was as tall and strong. That human, if you see him, I allow you to retreat temporarily, but if you can kill him, the position of leader is yours. Azog made a promise angrily, and soon Bolger set off with a group of orcs. In the dense forest, the dwarves were drowsy and complained about the dark forest. However, although the environment was dim and the sun was invisible, the group's actions were still smooth. They did not encounter any danger along the way and soon arrived at a broken bridge. "Don't touch it," Levi reminded the dwarf who tried to reach out and touch the river. But he tried to fill some river water with a bucket, but there was nothing unusual, just ordinary water. Obviously, the magic in the river could not be taken away and would only work in the Black Forest. Following Levi, Thorin also reminded loudly, "Didn't you hear what Gandalf said before coming in? This forest is shrouded in some dark magic, and there is a curse flowing in the river. There are vines over there. We can swing over. It's better to let the light ones go first." "No, I don't think it's necessary." Levi interrupted Thorin and said, "We can build a road over there." As he spoke, Levi took out stones and clacked them along the broken bridge to the opposite side. In order to prevent some dwarves with wider bodies from falling, he also considerately widened the road a few squares. "It's amazing." Old Balin couldn't help but sigh, and his sleepiness was dispelled by Levi's operation. "Fortunately, to be honest, I don't want to climb that vine. I don't think it can bear the weight of everyone, especially Bomber." Beaufort echoed, causing Bomber to curl his lips unhappily. What a magical magic! It can actually make stones grow on the wooden bridge. Keely stood on the newly built stone road and stomped his feet several times, only to find that it was very solid. Philly continued, "How many normal people can hang out with Gandalf?" "Oh, sorry, I don't mean to belittle." Realizing that his words were a bit ambiguous, he quickly explained to Levi, "It's okay, I understand." Levi patted Philly's shoulder, indicating that he didn't need to care about this little thing. Unconsciously, the dwarves have regarded Levi as a person like Gandalf, or more specifically, as a person who has a natural leadership position like a wizard. At the same time, everyone gradually became accustomed to some magical tricks that Levi would come up with from time to time. They had long been accustomed to the fact that food in blocks could be conjured out of thin air. Gandalf could also summon lightning and fire and blow away a group of goblins with a blast. In terms of magic performance, this old man's magic was much stronger than Levi's, but he didn't use it much. Speaking of which, even Thorin had the same attitude towards Levi as everyone else. He would reprimand his companions who made mistakes and would scold Bilbo when he wanted to go home, but he never used his temper on Levi, just like he never got angry with Gandalf. As the dwarves said when they talked about Gandalf, "He is a wizard, he can do whatever he wants, you don't care." They had the same mentality towards Levi, but the difference was that Levi had signed a contract and had the obligation and responsibility to help them. On the bridge, looking at Levi's back, Thorin nodded, thinking that this person was not hired in vain. He was definitely worth the reward. Not only was he powerful, but he could also use some magic like Gandalf. If there was a chance, he should get to know him well. At the end of the team, Bilbo looked at the cube that Levi conjured out of thin air and unconsciously touched the ring in his pocket. "Do I know an invisibility spell?" The hobbit thought so. "Don't waste time. Let's hurry through the forest." Thorin called out, "Not far across the magic river. You can actually reach a place closer to the woodland elves. But this section of the road is full of dangers, and there are shadows stirring in it." Levi looked at the spider webs on the tree and resisted the urge to collect some spider silk with scissors or a sword. Those spiders relied on the vibration of the webs to detect prey. If he really did this, there was a high probability that he would immediately attract a large group of spiders. He didn't care, but the other members of the expedition team were a little confused, especially now that everyone except Levi was in a drowsy state. They were not suitable for fighting now. Hiss! There was some kind of low hum coming from overhead. Levi instinctively drew his sword and slashed upwards, and a huge spider corpse fell down, its surface blazing with fire. Achievement/title obtained, Spider Killer. Description: kill a spider. What is this? Thorin stared suddenly and woke up instantly. Spiders, representatives of evil forces, are encroaching on this forest. Levi explained and asked, "Did any of you encounter the spider web? These spiders will determine the location of their prey based on the vibration of the spider web." Cobweb? No, I haven't seen that thing before. No, I stayed on the road the whole time and never touched it. Me neither. No, a group of dwarves turned around and denied again and again. It was definitely not Bilbo. He had been following Levi, and Levi was watching closely. That is to say, this spider actively searched for and launched the attack. After picking up the fallen thread and spider eyes, Levi suddenly wanted to take the initiative to find spiders. These were all materials. Without more management, they would not be able to use the enchantment of looting 3. Ready to fight. While thinking, Thorin suddenly roared behind him, and everyone immediately picked up their weapons. Bilbo also drew his dagger and took a look. It's not an oak, that's... He raised his head and saw densely packed, huge spiders crawling down from the top of the woods. The number was enough to perfectly interpret the term blocking the sky and blocking out the sun. Run! Seeing that the situation was beyond what he could handle, Thorin shouted Gandalf's favorite line. A dash! Bombur, who was the largest and seemed to have the most flesh, immediately became the first target of the spiders. While shouting, he banged the spiders' heads crazily, smashing each one into pieces. Levi was naturally one of the first to react. He killed the spider next to him with 3 or 2 swords and quickly approached the expedition team. He ran and slashed all the way without stopping. No spider could withstand his sword. As the battle progressed, several sets of spider eyes accumulated in the backpack. At this moment, countless spider corpses were piled up behind the expedition team, most of which were burning with fire. At first glance, it looked like someone was using flames to it's like a straight line is drawn here. Most of the spiders were blocked behind the expedition team. Occasionally, a few scattered ones jumped down from the sky to attack, but they were quickly cleared away by the dwarves. Poof! In a panic, even Bilbo pierced the head of a spider. Before the spider died, I don't know if it was an illusion, but Bilbo seemed to hear it talking. The spider used an onomatopoeia to describe the feeling of being stabbed by a dagger. Sting. That's a good name. From now on, this sword will be called Stabding. The spiders died one after another. Seeing that the crisis seemed to be able to be overcome safely, suddenly there were sounds of shuttles in the jungle, and arrows struck one after another from various tricky angles, each of which could accurately hit one. A spider's vitals can be killed with one blow. Following the arrows were a group of elves wearing dark green robes and armor. They flexibly moved between the branches of the trees, killing the remaining spiders one after another. However, they did not put away their weapons, but turned their bows and arrows to aim at the expedition team. Don't think I won't do anything to you, dwarves. I'd be more than happy to do so. The leading young elf drew his bow and aimed his arrow at Thorin. Although he had never seen him before, Levi recognized him at a glance. That is none other than the elf prince of the Black Forest Kingdom, Legolas. The elves of the Black Forest are not as good-tempered as the elves of Rivendell. Compared to Rivendell, the place where they live is not safe. They often need to fight, and they often trade with humans in the river valley. All of this makes their character relatively different from Rivendell. Other elves are more open-minded and cantankerous. Levi put away his sword and took a step forward. Don't move, an elf reminded. I've heard about you, a powerful warrior who is rumored to use some magical magic, the natural enemy of the oaks. Levi. Legolas put away his weapon, took 2 steps forward and said, Welcome to the Woodland Kingdom. Legolas, greetings to you. There have been a lot of rumors about this human being in recent times, and some of them are quite outrageous. When he first heard about it, Legolas was not convinced and thought it was an exaggerated rumor. After all, how could a human being do that? It was not until later that his father, Thranduil, the king of the woodland, told him that this was true did he pay attention to it. Reputation of Woodland Kingdom, plus 500, respect. Even though Levi had never been to this place before, when they met, the initial reputation of the Woodland Kingdom was directly 500. This was probably because Levi plowed the oaks in the valley near the Black Forest. what he did because these elves can see it. Since Levi's arrival, the main enemies of the woodland elves have become spiders, and there are fewer oaks even harassing the forest borders. In fact, after killing so many oaks, Levi's reputation in most nearby camps has reached the respected level. Only some farther away have a lower reputation. However, as the rumors gradually spread, the reputation of the place is also slowly increasing. On the other side, another female elf came over after Legolas. She looked at Levi up and down and said, "Guard Captain Toriel, greetings to you." Levi nodded and replied, "Greetings to you." After saying hello, Legolas said, "The reception may have to wait for a while. I have to deal with the dwarves here first. They are my companions." Levi explained, "Sorry, I can't judge the purpose of these dwarves coming here. They must be taken back for questioning." Legolas waved his hand and planned to search the dwarves. "Why are you treating them differently?" Some dwarves started making a fuss. "Discrimination. This is discrimination. Didn't you hear that we are in the same group as Levi? Go away, don't touch my things. We have the same purpose." Seeing that the dwarves were about to be kidnapped, Levi said. The atmosphere suddenly became subtle. The purpose is the same, which means that if they want to kidnap the dwarf, they must also kidnap Levi. No one wants to be an enemy of a living legend. Legolas stopped, turned to look at Levi, took a breath, and was about to say something. Suddenly, a scout arrived and interrupted the exchange between the two. He said to Levi, "Lord Thranduil invites you to talk to him." Legolas looked left and right, then gave up temporarily and gave the order, "Bring them back." The dwarves breathed a sigh of relief, and Bilbo, who was protected in the middle, also felt relieved and gave up the idea of being invisible. The group of people entered a palace surrounded by elves. Bang! The door is closed. Although the dwarves avoided being searched and imprisoned, they were inevitably guarded by a group of soldiers to prevent them from making any moves. A group of people were resting in the reception hall, muttering and discussing the current situation. After a while, Thorin and Bilbo were led away to the king's throne. But before them, Levi had been talking to Thranduil for a while. "Since last year, I have heard that there was a brave ranger who fought against the orc army alone in the Anduin Valley, evacuating the humans there, and he was accompanied by a gray robe wizard. I know Gandalf's abilities very well, so this makes people curious. How can you fight against so many orcs by yourself?" The king stood up from the throne, walked down slowly, and stared at Levi for a long time, apparently looking through the title library as usual. "Use this." Levi patted his sword. "This sword, can I see it?" "Certainly." With permission, Thranduil took out the sword and looked at it carefully for a while. "A sword with excellent forging skills. Does it have a name?" "No. Actually, I haven't thought of a name yet. The day it has a name, it will strike fear into the hearts of the orcs." The king made a prophecy, waved the sword flowers that were pleasing to the eye, and sheathed the sword. "Thanks." After polite greetings, Thranduil returned to the throne and got down to business. "Speaking of which, why did Levi, the natural enemy of the oaks, the savior of mankind in the Anduin Valley, and the master of magical magic, come to the woodland kingdom? Are you being hunted by the orc army and seeking shelter, or are you just passing by?" Leeway wanted to explain the complicated reasons, but before he could think of the words, the king continued. "No matter what your purpose is, you are welcome in the woodland kingdom. You can stay here as long as you want. We will leave our kindness and patience to our friends." The king's attitude towards Livy was quite friendly, but he kept silent about the dwarves, as if Livy had come to the Black Forest alone. "Those dwarves are my companions. The purpose of our trip is to regain the Lonely Mountain. I think His Majesty the King of the Woodland should understand the strategic significance there. If the dwarves can regain their homeland, it will become a solid line of defense against evil forces." Levi took the initiative to clarify his words. "Of course I understand, but have you forgotten that there's an evil dragon entrenched there? If Smaug is released, the first to be affected will be the Black Forest. At that time, other forces can wait and see for a while, but the Black Forest is definitely the most anxious one. I will deal with that dragon." Levi promised. You? Thranduil wanted to laugh a little. How could a human know the horror of a dragon? Even when he led a legion, he did not dare to rashly go to war with the dragon. Again, it is not that they cannot win, but the cost is too high, which can easily cause the elves' population to collapse. The elves are not as prosperous as they were in ancient times. Any war will accelerate their decline. Just when I wanted to remind this human friend not to brag, the guards suddenly arrived with two people, Thorin and Bilbo. At this moment, Bilbo opened his big eyes, looking at this and that, quite nervous, but after seeing Levi there, he also felt a little relieved. When talking with Levi, Thranduil still had a faint smile and comfort on his face, but as soon as Thorin arrived, Levi immediately felt that the king's ease disappeared, and even the arc of his mouth was retracted. As he said, "The kindness of the woodland elves is only for friends." Soon, the two kings talked about things. Thranduil promised to help Thorin's action to regain his homeland, as long as they returned the things that originally belonged to the elves. And Thorin still played steadily. As soon as he saw the elves, he began to sneer and refuse any conditions of the elves. He also felt that the elves owed them. By the way, he loudly condemned the king in the hall and cursed him after the condemnation. Levi wanted to block Thorin's mouth several times. Didn't you see Thranduil on the throne was so angry that his eyes widened? I have never seen such a shameless dwarf. Soon, Thorin knew that he had hit a wall this time. The woodland elves were not as good-tempered as the elves in the valley. Although they also had the usual elegance of the elves, this elegance was still accompanied by a hint of irritability. If you are willing to stay here, then you can stay here and slowly decay. Anyway, hundreds of years are just a blink of an eye for the lives of elves. I have the patience. Lock up these dwarves. Under Thorin's abuse and insults, the influence of Levi's reputation was successfully wasted, and the dwarves were still confiscated and locked up. However, Thranduil did not vent his anger on Bilbo, the hobbit. After chatting with Bilbo for a few words, he let him go and allowed him to move freely like Levi. Pig teammates. Levi slapped his head and scolded Thorin, let alone him. Even if Gandalf called 10 eagles, he couldn't control Thranduil's bad temper. If they didn't kill them directly, it was because the elves still thought about the feelings of some fellow free people. Comparing his feelings, Levi himself couldn't bear this. If Gandalf were here, he would definitely curse silly Thorin, then light up his pipe and think of a solution. Your Majesty, dwarves are not very good at communication. Of course I know. Thranduil didn't want to listen to Levi's persuasion at the moment, and interrupted directly. They're so stubborn, like stones, and they were the ones who broke the oath first. So what qualifications does he have to say that I will you die? Even if I let them leave, even if everything goes well, the end result will be just another king falling into madness. Now Levi had nothing to say. When it comes down to it, the things the dwarves did cannot be forgiven. It was indeed the dwarves who broke their promise first, causing a feud between the elves and dwarves. The culprit of all this is the greed of the dwarves. If the blame must be passed, it can only be passed to Sauron. The ring he gave to the dwarves will infinitely deepen their desire, until it reaches a morbid state. However, during the conversation, apart from the dwarves, there was another thing that Levi was concerned about from the beginning. I just saw some injuries on His Majesty's face. Thranduil paused, wondering why Levi would mention this matter. Well, it was injured by dragon flames, and it never healed. The true face of this king was actually very ferocious. Half of his face was burned, and his face was blurred. Normally, he looked fine, just because the wound was covered up with magic. From Li Wei's perspective, the king's blood volume has always been dissatisfied and has never been able to recover. 27/30. Levi took out a golden apple, and the king's attention was immediately attracted. As an elf who is good at using magic, he is very sensitive to magic. This is a small gift that represents my personal feelings. I hope it will be helpful to His Majesty's injury. It's very beautiful, very valuable, and I can feel that it contains magic and has the power to heal, but I'm afraid it's a bit. Even among the elves, Thranduil is relatively good at using magic. In fact, it is not difficult for the elves to use magic to achieve healing effects. Many elves can do it if they want to, but even so, this king's face, the burn on him, still hasn't healed after all this time, which is enough to illustrate the difficulty of treating it. Why don't you give it a try? There's no harm in it, right? Crunch. Under Levi's persuasion, Thranduil took the apple that seemed to be made of gold, hesitated for a moment, and then bit it. There is no metallic taste as expected, just a burst of aroma and sweetness in the mouth, followed by surging magic and healing power throughout the body. The illusion on his face disappeared unconsciously, and the ferocious face was revealed again. Under the effect of the golden apple, the exposed scarlet flesh gradually exuded activity, colliding with the dragon's breath entrenched on it. The pain and itch made Thranduil his face became tense for a while. As if feeling challenged, all the healing power of the golden apple gathered upwards to help the wound regenerate. This battle of forces ended with golden apple winning. As the remaining dragon breath gradually dissipated, flesh and blood began to grow on the face again. 30-30. It looks like the effect is good, Levi said easily, as if he just did a small thing. Really recovered. Thranduil took a few deep breaths and gently touched his face. It's been too long since I felt perfect skin. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Levi, this burn has been bothering me for a long time. Woodland Kingdom reputation plus 500. Current reputation 1000 Li. From now on, you are an ally of the Woodland Kingdom. If you need it someday in the future, you can come for assistance. Then the Woodland Kingdom will respond. A covenant is made here. Less words mean bigger things. Judging from Levi's reputation, he knew that the king was telling the truth and not making random promises. If the Woodland Kingdom only respected Levi's personal strength and outstanding contribution to the Freedom Camp before, then they now regard Levi as a true ally and can summon a certain amount of troops to support him. Thank you, but help is always mutual. If you need anything, I won't be stingy. After politely replying, Levi changed the topic. I heard that there are gems belonging to elves in the Lonely Mountain. When Thranduil stopped, he felt that this human topic was changing a bit too fast, and why it was always a secret and sensitive topic. That is not an ordinary gem. To me, it has some special meaning. I have tried to get it back many times, but every time I can only come back empty-handed. Now that the Lonely Mountain is occupied by an evil dragon, the hope of getting it back is getting slimmer. What if I could bring it back? Then I can give you a promise in return, the king's promise. Thranduil said. About those dwarves. Thranduil suddenly mentioned. I know that you are my companions on the expedition, and I can guarantee their safety, but I will not let them leave before I achieve my goal. I understand. Levi nodded and added, however, not all of them think that way. Apart from Thorin, there are people they can talk to. I will seriously consider your words. Thranduil replied. At this point, it is impossible to release the dwarf directly. The old and new grudges add up and cannot be settled in a short while. Although Levi could directly dig open the prison, he was not sure what would happen if he did so. But speaking of it, he didn't have to do it. Someone would do it. The conversation with the king ended quickly. After leaving the king's throne, Levi asked the elf for directions and then walked in one direction. The prison is over here. He had just asked for directions and planned to discuss today's affairs with the dwarves. As he was walking, a sudden noise came. Levi followed the sound and approached and found a group of elves chatting lively next to the storage room. We're planning a party. Suddenly, a familiar voice came from behind. Levi turned around and saw Legolas holding a fruit in his hand, saying hello to him. Levi also said hello to the elf prince. Banquet. The Starlight Feast, this is our tradition, is scheduled to be held in 7 days. If you're interested in participating, we will welcome you. Levi shook his head. I'm afraid not. I still have things to do. 7 days later, it happened to be the day when Levi and Gandalf agreed to meet in Dol Guldur. Moreover, even if it was not this time, after all his companions were locked up, it was still a bit unreasonable for him to go to the banquet at this time. But soon, these worries were dismissed, and a man came to Levi. Bilbo. After politely rejecting Legolas's kind invitation, Levi followed Bilbo to a deserted place and asked, "What happened?" "I went to visit Thorin and the others, Levi." Bilbo sighed. As soon as he left the king's throne, he immediately went to visit the dwarves, and he happened to bump into Levi on the way back. After briefly talking about the situation of the dwarves, Bilbo said hesitantly, "Actually, Thorin entrusted me to do something." "Then did you agree?" I haven't agreed yet. After all, this matter is still difficult, so I want to ask your opinion." "I don't know what to say. Let me think about it." 7 days later, the Woodland Kingdom will host a starlight feast. All the elves are looking forward to this banquet, including the prison guards. They will be very drunk by then. Levi suddenly said something irrelevant. "Bilbo, I believe you have your own judgment in mind." He patted the hobbit on the shoulder. "While the banquet is going on, I happen to have something to do, and I need to leave for a while. Of course, not only for that day, but also for a period of time after that. I may be temporarily separated from you." As he spoke, Levi took out a shiny golden apple from his backpack. It contains healing power and can heal almost any injury. The apple was handed to Bilbo, and Levi continued, "I trust you, Bilbo, that you will know when to use it. No, I don't think I will need it, so you should keep it for yourself. You fight a lot, so you must need it more than me." Bilbo refused immediately. Regardless of its utility, this thing was very valuable at first sight. "You will, Bilbo." Looking at Levi's eyes that seemed to have penetrated everything, Bilbo wanted to say something more, but the words he prepared seemed to be stuck in his throat. He opened his mouth and finally agreed. "Okay, I get it. Thank you, Levi. I've already figured out what to do." Levi's trust and gifts made Bilbo full of determination at this moment. Along the way, he was no longer the comfort-loving hobbit who would miss home from time to time. There were some things he had his own judgment on. "I will do this. This is what we agreed on early on. I said I would help them regain their home. I'm glad you figured it out." There are still 7 days until the Starlight Feast is held. After separating from Bilbo, Levi also went to visit the dwarves and asked about their situation and next plans. "How about you dig out for us?" a dwarf asked in a low voice. Levi pointed to a group of guards standing at the door and shrugged. "I can dig it out, but you may not be able to get out." Of course, Levi can force the dwarves out, but the result is that the reputation of the Woodland Kingdom will be reduced at best, and at worst, there may be some kind of disaster. "Big problem," Levi reminded. "You won't stay here and rot forever. Don't forget, I'm not the only one outside." The dwarves looked at each other and were a little quiet for a while. Everyone knew who the other person was referring to. In fact, before Levi came, Thorin had already entrusted Bilbo with this matter, and this matter was not hidden from anyone except the elves. "Don't worry, this is not the end of your journey." Levi also learned how to play riddles, but as soon as he said this, the dwarves knew that it was probably safe, and they just had to wait for their snitch. "What about you, Levi?" Keely asked. "I still have some things to do here. If there is time, I will meet you after this." "Good." Having settled the matter on the dwarves' side for the time being, Levi walked out of the prison, looked at the palace, and suddenly slapped his head. "I've all forgotten about it." Thinking about this, Levi directly found an elf as a tour guide, walked around the underground palace, and successfully unlocked the synthesis of the Woodland Elf series equipment. You can never have too many types of synthetic tables, just get as much as you come. The equipment of the Elf series, apart from the difference in style, is actually about the same strength, nothing special about it. However, besides the equipment, there was something else that caught Levi's attention. Some elves undergoing training. The long life makes most of the elves very good in skills. They have enough time to learn slowly. It can be said that each person is brave and good at fighting, and all of them are elite. However, if skills are not used for too long, they will become rusty, so daily training is still necessary. Training grounds may not be common in the valley, but they are everywhere in the Woodland Kingdom because their fighting frequency is quite high. I have to say that these elves are very good at wielding swords, and any one of them can show off their skills. But swordsmanship. The movements of the elves reminded Levi of a module he had played before. Judging from current observations, the system does not add new modules irregularly. Every time a new module is added, it is because I have come into contact with the corresponding thing. Just as he was thinking about it, Levi's eyes suddenly found a rather familiar figure. Legolas. He didn't know what he had gone through. At this moment, he was training with a gloomy look on his face, and the sword moves dazzled Levi. Awesome. Levi couldn't help but praise. Sensing Levi's arrival, Legolas immediately stopped and responded. Thank you for the compliment, but I think no matter how superb my swordsmanship is, it will never compare to the legend in the wilderness. If possible, I would like to ask for some guidance on combat. Legolas said seriously. Levi rubbed his hands, feeling a little embarrassed. What can he give guidance on, like eating a golden apple and drinking a bottle of medicine? Or when a despicable cube man cards the trait and throws TNT? To be honest, he doesn't even use these things unless necessary. Ordinary half-orcs are not worthy of him using the real trump cards in his backpack, which are reserved for the big boss. Actually, I don't know much about swordsmanship. In fact, I have never learned these things. Levi explained. Never learned. Legolas was actually a little surprised. How is this possible? If he really doesn't have any good skills, where did those scary results come from? It wouldn't be through brute force. It's true that I haven't learned any combat skills. If I had to choose one thing that I'm good at, it would be pure chopping. Listening to what Levi said, Legolas felt a little incredible. He didn't know how to describe Levi. This person was too unique. Actually, I'm very interested in the fighting methods of elves. If possible, can you teach me some? Of course, I'm happy to help. Although he was a little surprised, Legolas responded to Levi's request on the spot. He showed his arsenal of weapons and said, swords, daggers, bows, or barehanded fighting, dodge skills. You want to see whatever, I'll show you whatever. I will do my best, without reservation. As he spoke, Legolas picked up the weapon used for practice and handed one to Levi. This is how an unexpected display and teaching began. Levi would still feel worried at the beginning. He didn't know how to hold back during the fight. It would be embarrassing if he accidentally injured Legolas. However, as the training progressed, Levi gradually lost his worries. Missing, not hitting at all, this guy is harder to catch than dust floating in the air, and those moves are not something humans can do, even though he is not a human in the first place. If it's a life-and-death fight where all means are used, Levi still has many ways to deal with this situation. But if it's just a competition of pure skills, then it has to be admitted that he is really not very good at this aspect. Clang! Once again, Levi's sword was blocked, exposing his weakness. After this time, Legolas suddenly stopped, indicating that he had completed one stage of the display. As Legolas stopped, a prompt appeared almost at the same time. Module added, dynamic sword skills, appeared. Levi couldn't help but be a little excited. He originally just wanted to try it, but he didn't expect that he actually tried it. Unaware of what was happening on Levi's side, Legolas put away his sword and explained, what I just demonstrated are the most basic techniques. These methods of dealing with enemies cannot be learned without experiencing real combat. However, for someone like you who is used to fighting on the battlefield, I believe you will be able to use it quickly. That's right. While agreeing, Levi opened the skill panel of the Dynamic Sword Skill mod. There is currently only one skill on it, Basic Sword Skill LV1. In the game, the function of this skill is to automatically lock onto one's enemies without having to manually aim. This is reflected in the fact that when Levi enters a combat state, his concentration will be stronger and his observation of the enemy will be more detailed. The skills of the Dynamic Sword Skill mod require skill balls to unlock or continue to upgrade, and skill balls need to be dropped by killing enemy creatures. In other words, if you want to acquire new skills or upgrade existing skills, you just need to keep cutting. I understand everything. For Legolas, the elf who showed him his fighting skills without reservation and helped him unlock new modules, Levi rewarded him with a golden apple. They all seem to like this thing very much. It's beautiful and practical. Although it seems that there are a lot of golden apples given out recently, Levi really doesn't know what he can give as a thank you. This is the most suitable gift in his backpack, and the quantity is relatively large. But speaking of it, it is estimated that no one can reject the golden apple. It directly affects the aesthetic point of most creatures. Oak said it was good when he saw it. After unlocking the basic swordsmanship, Levi never went to the training ground again, which made Legolas a little confused. Why did this person stop learning after learning it for a day? But what pleased the temporary instructor was that after that, Levi often went to kill some spiders and wandering oaks nearby. Although he always talks about brushing things and doesn't know what he means, all the elves see his behavior. No matter what he does is beneficial to the Woodland Kingdom. This deserves respect. Today's drop rate is so high. In the forest, Levi chopped off a spider again, looking embarrassed. In the past few days, I have chopped down hundreds of spiders, big and small, and built several nests. The spider eyes in my backpack can no longer fit, and as a result, I lost a basic sword skill and a dodge skill ball. After upgrading his basic sword skills to level 2 and dodge to level 1, Levi put away his sword and returned to the Woodland Kingdom. Tomorrow is the Starlight Feast, and it is also the day we agreed to gather. I noticed that there are many orcs ambushing at the eastern border of the forest. They seem to be searching for something. To the east of the woodland is the river leading to Changhu Town, which is also an important trade channel for the elves. It is definitely not a good thing to have oaks entrenched there. Returning to the palace, Levi brought the information to the king. After receiving an answer that Thranduil would take seriously, he set off for Dol Gul Fortress. The day after Levi left, a feast was held in the Woodland Kingdom. The elves carried barrels of wine to the banquet hall and toasted to celebrate. However, on this great day, there was bad news. The dwarves ran away. Upon hearing the news, Thranduil was no longer in the mood to drink and simply put the wine glass aside. Legolas, you lead the team, go dash. As if something suddenly occurred to him, the king paused and continued. Go and clear out the oaks nearby. Don't let them ruin our dinner. What about the dwarves? Legolas asked. Don't worry about them. Let them go with the river. Life or death is their own business. I don't care. Also, remember to bring back a living creature when you clean up the oaks. I have something to ask. Although he had many doubts, Legolas accepted the order and rushed to the mouth of the river with a group of elves. The king sat on his throne, deep in thought. Dol Guldur, once the home of the woodland elves, has been abandoned since the elves moved north in the Second Age. However, in the Third Era, an evil force occupied this place. Its appearance is shabby and the surroundings are silent. It seems that nothing is moving here. However, these are just illusions used to deceive the outside world. Even the rumors of the necromancer may have been actively released in order to confuse the public. To gain more development time, Levi stepped on dead branches and rotten leaves and approached the gate of the fortress step by step. Gandalf, he called. Is this late? No. Suddenly a voice came from behind the stone pillar beside him. Levi turned his head and saw the two wizards Gandalf and brown-robed Radagast walking out together. A wizard is never late, said Gandalf. That's right. As long as my hair is here, it's only because others are late. Radagast echoed. I'm almost certain, Levi, the enemy is here. Gandalf came closer and whispered, and the three people gathered in a circle and began to discuss. There is a hidden spell here. What he did means that he has not recovered his full strength and dare not show up publicly. Radagast, you go and bring a message to the Lady of the Golden Forest, asking for support. We must force the enemy out. Don't follow us. Got it? It's enough for Levi and I to investigate here. Radagast was startled. Do you think I'm not strong enough and you want me to run errands? Okay, I'll go. Radagast got into the hair cart and left quickly. Watching the brown robe leave, Levi asked, What should we do next? Go in directly. There is no other way. Let's go in and investigate. If something goes wrong, retreat immediately. With that said, Gandalf drew out Gramdurin, holding a staff in his left hand and a sword in his right hand, and drove ahead of Levi, while Levi followed behind him, keeping an eye on the rear. Looking at Gandalf's back, Levi couldn't help but think of a word. Sword to the ends of the earth, referring to a staff and a sword to cut to the ends of the earth. How about we wait for reinforcements? Levi suggested to Gandalf. To be honest, when he thought of certain battle scenes, he was still a little timid. After all, even if Sauron lost the Lord of the Rings and was now a remnant soul with only a small part of his power left, his power would still be considerable. At least he would have no problem beating Gandalf. I just don't know if my armor can withstand the fight. It's too late. I must know what Sauron is planning. Gandalf, who has always been cautious, decided to take a risk this time. Then we have a deal. If something goes wrong, we will run. Don't stay here for too long. I will. Believe me, my life is still useful. I can't throw it away casually. In a careful exploration, the two went deep into the ruined fortress. Here, the sky is always cloudy, and there is almost no difference between day and night. On the way, Levi looked up and saw a pile of iron cages on both sides. There were some dry bones in them, some big and some small. Obviously, many people have been tortured here until they died. The torture they suffered might even be for no reason, just because the orcs like the act of torture. This is where Thrain was once imprisoned. I met him when I came here to explore a long time ago. Gandalf looked at the iron cage above his head and shook his head. He was captured here and tortured for 5 years. No one knows what he had suffered. When I found him, he was already unconscious and could not even remember who he was. Not long after he handed me the key and map, he passed away, just as Gandalf was explaining the history of this place to Levi as usual, acting as the encyclopedia of Middle-earth. Swish! A shadow suddenly flashed by. Levi turned his head sharply, but found nothing. Gandalf also looked over and was about to ask, when suddenly a sword emerged from behind Gandalf and stabbed down fiercely. Dang! Levi's nameless sword and Gandalf's Glamdring were drawn out. A translucent, dark figure appeared out of thin air. Ringwraiths. Gandalf said a word. Hiss! The ringwraiths roared as if from hell, howling and rushing over. Gandalf quickly bent down to avoid it, and Levi also quickly dodged, moving his body to the left like a ghost to avoid the attack. Boom! Gandalf raised his staff, and a white light suddenly appeared at the end of the staff, repelling the ringwraiths. Levi did not miss the opportunity, and drew out his long sword and slashed forward, directly burning the ringwraiths. Fire is what the ringwraiths fear. This sword strike made the ringwraiths wail in pain, retreated several steps, and hid in the shadows on the spot. Fortunately, the swords in our hands are weapons blessed by the elves. These ringwraiths cannot be touched by ordinary weapons. Be careful. Ah! A sigh suddenly came from behind Levi's ears, and along with the sigh came a poisonous breath like black fog, which made him feel chilled and as if he was falling into the abyss. Fear, fives. Withering, fives. Toxic, fives. Take courage. A flash of white light cleared all the negative buffs on the status bar. Levi shuddered, woke up suddenly, and swung his sword back. However, the spirit had long disappeared into the darkness. The ring of fire in Gandalf's hand was shining, and under the cover of that light, Levi felt warm all over and had endless courage. What is that? The two stood back to back on guard, and Levi felt a lingering fear. Black breath, the evil magic of the ringwraiths, will immediately cause serious illness to those who are infected. If they're cut by Morgul's blade at this time, without treatment, they will probably be dragged into the shadows and transformed into ghosts. Perhaps the corpse demons in the ancient tombs are related to their evil magic. Gandalf said quickly. After experiencing 2 sneak attacks, Gandalf and Levi both went directly to the highest alert state at this moment, not letting go of any corner around where there might be sneak attacks. However, if you want to say who is the most nervous, it has to be Levi. Since he put on the nether alloy armor, he has not felt threatened for a long time. Now it seems that no matter how thick the armor is, it can only prevent physical damage. He can't deal with magic damage and mental attacks well. However, every profession has its own specialty, and now is the time for wizards to appear. Get ready, Levi. What? Get ready to attack. After giving a reminder, Gandalf suddenly slammed his staff into the ground and chanted in another language. Let all darkness appear here. After he finished speaking, A huge halo that was much thicker than the halo of the detection spell burst out from his body, sweeping across a large area of nearby buildings. After releasing this spell, Gandalf's face was obviously much paler, not because the spell consumed too much, but because he saw the situation around him clearly. 9 transparent figures were expelled from the Shadow World. Gandalf had reminded them before. Levi attacked them immediately and quickly hit a ringwraith with 2 swords, splitting his armor and setting his cloak on fire. This sudden attack was very successful. The ringwraith hit by Levi's combo directly lost the form on which it depended for existence and dissipated into the air. But all this is only temporary. The ringwraith will not die. Only the form can be destroyed, and it can be reshaped after a period of time and walk on the earth again. Levi's sneak attack was successful, and Gandalf also quickly added a shock blast, repelling one of the ringwraiths, but failed to break up his body, only forcing him to escape into the Shadow World temporarily. At this moment, the remaining 7 ringwraiths also reacted. 3 of them besieged Gandalf, and 4 besieged Levi. Under the blessing of the Ring of Fire in Gandalf's hand, the black breath of the ringwraiths lost its effect. No matter how the 4 ringwraiths tried, they could not make Levi fall into fear or poison again. These ringwraiths were once kings, the most powerful humans in the past era. Even if they have lost their self-consciousness and turned into dark slaves, their fighting instincts and knowledge are still there. Let alone 4. Even if they only face 1, Levi will be in trouble without a sneak attack. Thanks to the high concentration brought by basic swordsmanship, Levi can barely survive 1 or 2 moves in the siege of these former kings. However, ringwraiths are ringwraiths after all, and they have other means. Just as Levi swung his sword again, a ringwraith with a rather hideous armor suddenly let out a howl. The howl was so loud that it made people's brains numb, and 2 fists were no match for 8 hands, and coupled with the mental attack, a flaw finally appeared. A Morgul blade seized the opportunity and chopped Levi's armor hard, making a crisp sound of flicking. Just when Levi was thankful that his armor was still thick, the blade suddenly flashed, passed through the armor with a puff, hit the flesh and blood, and cut a wound. -3. Withering, 5s. Morgul poison, *infinite. The armor lost its function, and only the protection enchantment was still in effect, weakening most of the impact of the blade and reducing the damage to a low level. However, it can block physical impact, but it cannot block the curse of Morgul's blade. A piece of weapon debris remains in the flesh and blood, causing Levi to feel something abnormal in his chest and blur his vision. Magical damage can ignore armor, and only protection enchantment can work on it. What is this? Levi. In an emergency, Gandalf quickly repelled the 3 ringwraiths around him and rushed over to shake the ringwraith that injured Levi aside. Swish! Levi quickly turned back and made up a sword, ignited the ringwraith, and forced it back into the shadows. Run! Gandalf shouted, and Levi rushed out with Gandalf without any hesitation and drank a mouthful of milk while running. Fortunately, the milk was still the invincible milk. The buff bar was directly emptied, and the abnormal feeling in the heart disappeared. Where are you running, scum? Boom! A heavy hammer suddenly fell, and a pale figure appeared, followed by a large group of orcs, who surrounded them tightly, screaming and waving their weapons, and they were not afraid even against Levi. Sauron's existence is like the countless lava in the Doomsday volcano, filling the minds of the orcs, suppressing their consciousness, allowing them to unite and dare to attack any enemy, unless the enemy brings them more fear than Sauron. Azig, what? Your wounds have healed, and your courage has also increased. Levi taunted, and the effect was significant, directly making Azig's chest rise and fall. You must die here today. The hammer was in front of him in an instant. Levi dodged to the side and fought with Azig for a few more swords. After these few swords, Azig immediately felt the difference. This human is stronger. Go kill them. He immediately stepped back several steps, protected his men in front of him, and issued a siege order. This arrogant pale orc finally learned his lesson at this moment. Why'd he have to go up himself when he could let his men beat him up? Orcs wearing some kind of standard full suit of armor rushed over from all directions, surrounding the two tightly. The ring wraiths emerged from the shadows, standing in the pile of orcs or on the wall, enjoying the show. Let's fight our way out. Levi silently ate a golden apple, opened a few bottles of medicine, and drank them. At this moment, he could no longer hold back. As the bottles of potion were quickly drunk, a bunch of buffs appeared in the status bar. Speed 2, Strength 2, Regeneration 2. In order to deal with the current situation, all the potions he drank just now were level 2 potions. Although the duration was short, the effect was powerful. At this moment, Levi felt that he could punch several orcs even without a sword. "Levi, come here!" Just when Levi was about to show his skills, Gandalf suddenly called out and grabbed his cloak. Boom! With a flash of white light, the two disappeared directly from the spot without a trace. "Gandalf, why didn't you use this method earlier? I drank all those potions in vain." Gandalf's actions made Levi speechless. "If you had taken me away earlier, I wouldn't have drunk them." This kind of thing can't be done often. You should understand what I mean. It's not without cost." Gandalf laughed awkwardly, but his feet didn't stop. The two of them were still running out. The army behind them also reacted at this time and chased along the road behind them. Gandalf knocked his cane back and directly smashed the top of the watchtower behind him. The huge rocks that fell flattened a bunch of chasing orcs and blocked the road. Safe? Just when Levi was thinking this, a wisp of black air suddenly appeared in front of him. Boom! A phantom of nothingness like a huge pupil appeared in front of him, blocking the way of the two. Upon closer inspection, there was a figure surrounded by flames in the middle of the pupil. Sauron. Gandalf was paralyzed now. Levi was also paralyzed because he had no health bar, or rather, this was not Sauron's body at all. Maybe it was just an external illusion. At this moment, the effect of the potion on his body still had a few seconds left, and Levi was a little eager to move. He bit off another golden apple. "No light can defeat darkness, wizard." In the manic black fog, Sauron murmured. As soon as the voice fell, a rolling and boiling black fog attacked Levi beside Gandalf, as if he was going to get rid of the troublemakers other than the wizard first. However, this attack received an unexpected response. Levi subconsciously slashed with a sword, directly cutting the black fog in the middle and withstanding the impact. "Human? No matter what you are, stay here." Wow! The black fog spread violently, surrounding all the buildings in the nearby area. Gandalf quickly raised his staff and propped up a thick light barrier. All the buildings outside the barrier were smashed into slag by the black fog. At this moment, only the floor under Gandalf and Levi's feet was intact. Go, and call for support." Gandalf struggled to hold on, cleared the way back, and said to Levi, "I'll hold him back." "No, I just drank the medicine. Can I bear this grievance?" Seeing that the potion was about to expire in more than 10 seconds, Levi felt that it was a pity not to use it. In Gandalf's wide eyes, Levi suddenly jumped forward, locked onto Sauron's phantom, and drew out his long sword to chop it. Ding! At this moment, Levi felt as if he had chopped the bedrock, and this time, the elven ancient sword, which had almost never lost its durability, had its durability bar knocked out. Sauron was not unaffected. The flame figure in the middle of the huge pupil shrank and took a step back, and the surrounding black fog also shook. However, immediately afterwards, the Demon King showed a huge anger. The black fog on the scene suddenly surged, covering the sky and the sun, obscuring everything that the eyes could see, and there was only black and black in sight. At the same time, 9 phantoms walked out of the pupils. The ring wraiths, their bodies were recast by Sauron and became more powerful with the blessing of Sauron's power, and each of them was boiling with evil black air. The barrier that Gandalf had opened shrank and almost disappeared. Levi put a few TNTs on fire with the fastest hand speed in his life and built a stone wall in front of him, pulling Gandalf back. Boom! A series of explosions sounded, and the huge impact caused the ring wraiths that were approaching to disperse, and even a small gap appeared in the black fog that was wrapped around them. However, all this was only temporary. Almost at the same time as the body dissipated, the ring wraiths' figures condensed again, and the black fog behind them surged again, trying to swallow the two. Effective, but not much. The ring wraiths need Sauron's help to regain their form. If they are in other places, they will have to run back to Sauron to revive after being chopped off, and they will not be able to appear again for a while. But now Sauron is here, which is equivalent to moving their resurrection point to their faces, and surrounded by the darkness emitted by Sauron, the power of these ring wraiths has become stronger, and each of them is at the level of a small boss. It is like encountering a monster spawner that cannot be dug out. Gandalf once again propped up the barrier, and this time he used up all his strength. He looked at Levi with his eyes slanted, as if asking if you have any other ideas. Levi returned a look. Do you think I have a way? No, I really do. Gandalf, take this. Levi took out an ender pearl and handed it to Gandalf. He got this, by the way, when he traveled to Hell. But there were only 7 in total, 3 of which were swiped after squatting in the weird forest for a long time, and the other 4 were traded with piglins. I don't know if Levi's luck was too bad or the piglins were prejudiced against him. He threw a set of gold, and the ender pearl appeared twice, a total of 4, which made him so angry that he almost drew his sword and killed all the piglins. There were too few of these things. Levi didn't even think of using them unless they were particularly important or his life was in danger. What is this? Old Gandalf asked weakly, panting. A magic item. Throw it out, and it will teleport you to where it lands. But we are trapped now, While he was talking, the light on Gandalf's body dissipated, and he quickly knocked his staff on the ground. This time, there was no light shield bursting out, and he just used the magic of the staff itself to fight against Sauron. The pressure brought by Sauron became more and more huge, and Gandalf's staff emitted a kind of inconspicuous light, fighting against the pressure. It seemed that it would break at any time, but it held on. Endurance 3. I'll make a gap. Levi quickly piled up a pile of TNT behind him, and after lighting it, he quickly built a stone wall to slow down the impact. However, this time Sauron did not watch it with his eyes. He had already felt the power of the red object, and naturally would not let Levi light it. A black mist quickly extended out and slapped the already ignited TNT away. However, Sauron did not notice it at all, or in a place where he could not notice it at all, Levi had cut out the fishing rod and swung it at the glowing TNT that was slapped away, and a thin line was connected to it. With another pull, the ignited TNT was pulled back. Theoretically, as long as it is a solid object, the fishing rod can pull it. Obviously, the ignited TNT also retains its characteristics and is counted as a solid object. Boom! The moment the TNT was pulled back, it exploded, and the surrounding TNT also exploded. The huge impact weakened the black fog by several layers, and the stone wall used to relieve the impact was blown up. Gandalf suddenly turned around and pointed with his cane, and the exploded black fog dissipated, revealing an exit to the outside world. "Quick!" Gandalf shouted, and he threw the pearl out first, and Levi quickly followed suit. The exit quickly disappeared, and the black fog swept over Gandalf and Levi, knocking them back to the ground. Gandalf was just pinned against the wall, but Levi was in a terrible situation. Sauron's hostility towards him was so great that it almost overflowed. He directly pressed him against the tower and smashed one building after another. The power was so terrible that every time a building was smashed, Levi's health would plummet. This reminded him of the days when he fought against the Whites a year ago when he had no equipment. It has been a long time since I was beaten so badly. He ate the golden apples one after another, and even Ramba ate 2. When he was in danger, he smashed 2 bottles of instant healing potions. If it weren't for the props, he might be in danger now. Just as Sauron was accumulating strength to make a ruthless move, suddenly, Gandalf and Levi disappeared one after another, leaving only a group of purple particles in their place. "Oh, my foot seems to have sprained." Gandalf cried out in pain as he landed and jumped twice with his teeth bared. Levi was almost fine. With the help of fall protection, the damage caused to him by the pearl teleportation was decimal. You don't look injured. If the old man hadn't lost blood, Levi would have almost believed it. It's still very expensive. You can see that. When fighting against Sauron, Levi watched Gandalf's blood volume steadily decrease. At this moment, he was limping with his cane, holding his waist with one hand and running forward. He was quite embarrassed. Levi couldn't bear to watch it, so he bit a golden apple for him. Thank you. I feel much better. This thing is very magical. I feel that my strength has recovered a little. A warm feeling emerged from his body, and a layer of solid golden light enveloped Gandalf. It was a shield brought by the golden apple. That's good. Let's get out of here. Just as Levi and Gandalf ran into the forest, the shadow of Dol Guldur suddenly swelled up behind them, covering the sky and the sun and rushing towards them. Get down! Plop! Gandalf raised his staff and released a small transparent barrier, just covering the two of them. The black fog swept over them, rolling up several trees, but he didn't find the target he was looking for, so he could only return in disappointment. Levi looked up and saw that a large number of orcs and wargs gushed out from Dol Guldur like fountains, sweeping towards the north. A rough look showed that the number was at least in the tens of thousands. Levi also saw a pale figure among them, Azog, who rode the Wolf King to lead the army. They are out. I saw it. Gandalf got up and looked at the direction of the army and said, They are orcs and wargs from Moria, and there are also many trolls. They are marching towards the Lonely Mountain. Smaug has long been in alliance with Sauron. Now they want to completely occupy there. Levi, I have to hurry to meet up with Lady Galadriel and others and launch an attack on Dol Guldur again. What are you going to do? As they walked, Gandalf asked Levi about his plan. Me? I don't think I need to join. You can see that I don't have the power to fight him. I think you do, but you haven't noticed it yet, Gandalf said firmly. After saying that, he changed the subject again, but judging from the current situation, there are places where you are more needed. Erebor. Sauron's army marched towards the Lonely Mountain ahead of time, but at this moment, the dwarves were still struggling in Lake Town. It's amazing that my injury has healed. Keely sat in the chair at Bard's house, looking at his healed leg. Thank you, Toriel and Bilbo. On the way to Lake Town, Keely was attacked by Morgul's arrows. Bilbo gave the golden apple to Keely and used the healing power and shield to temporarily suppress the deterioration of his wounds. Toriel came later and used the king leaf as a medium to completely remove the poison of Morgul. After hearing Keely's words, Bilbo shook his head again and again. No, don't thank me. This apple was given to me by Levi. I'd better wait until Levi comes to thank you. So, I was saved by Levi again. Keely's face was complicated. At this time, Thorin came over and interrupted his thoughts. We will repay him later. What's more important now is to go to Erebor. Dwarf, you still insist on going to Lonely Mountain? Legolas stood up and asked Thorin condescendingly. That's our business. What does it have to do with you, an elf? Thorin also continued to play a steady special attack on the elves. You two chased us here. Are you trying to catch us back? Even if you did a good thing, let's be honest. Even if we are not armed now, we will not go back with you obediently. We will fight to the end. No, I didn't receive the order to take you back. Seeing Legolas start to frown, Toriel took the lead and said, We follow the orcs who ambushed at the edge of the forest all the way here, but I don't know why they suddenly retreated. This pursuit is also declared over. Thorin glanced at the female elf, then at Keely, and swallowed the sentence, Then you don't have to find us at all. My nephew's preferences seem to be a little different from those of normal dwarves. Is it because there are too few female dwarves in the tribe? Maybe it is necessary to have psychological counseling after this. Shaking his head, Thorin issued an order. Since everyone is fine, let's prepare tonight and set off for Erebor tomorrow. Thorin, it's still early. Should we wait for Gandalf and Levi? Philly came over and asked. We can still wait if we go there first. I don't want to waste any more time here. But we don't have any weapons. What if there's any accident on the way? We will have them. The dwarves discussed. Legolas and Toriel sat on one side, looking at each other, and they could see each other's confusion. What are these dwarves planning? Bard was also confused. What are you going to do? There's no place to sell weapons in the town. Ah, nothing. We're just discussing leaving. Yeah, I've been bothering you for so long. It's time to go. The dwarves looked carelessly, and Balin also joined them, and was about to say something. Suddenly he saw the clothes-drying rack behind Bard, so he changed the subject and said, "Brother, you want me to say that your clothes-drying rack looks really strange. It looks solid. That's not a clothes-drying rack." Oh, seeing that the topic was successfully changed, Balin quickly grabbed Bard's attention, walked to the side, and asked curiously, "What is that? Can it still be your family heirloom?" "Yes, it is." Is Balin really curious now, treating the clothes-drying rack as a family heirloom? Bud gently touched the clothes rack and said softly, "This is a relic left by my father. When the evil dragon attacked River Valley City, my father used this arrow to shoot the evil dragon. It turns out that you're the heir of the former lord of River Valley City." Obviously, Balin knew the goods. After getting closer, he could tell at a glance that the arrow was indeed made by a dwarf. It is said that this kind of black arrow has magical powers. It is extremely difficult to lose and can always return to the owner's hands. This is a genuine item, which means that the human being in front of him has indeed not deceived his identity. However, what you said is different from the rumors I heard. Although he was a little shocked by Bader's life experience, Barain still shook his head. If the dragon had been shot, how could it be in Erebor now? The dragon was shot, Bud suddenly said excitedly, "My dad absolutely nailed it." "Okay, brother, don't be so excited. I believe you're not ready yet." Balin raised his head, patted Bard's arm, and said calmly, "That black arrow is indeed sharp. I believe it has the ability to break through dragon scales. It may have injured Smaug, but in any case, judging from the results, that evil dragon is still alive today, isn't it? Whether it's you or your father, I believe you are both brave warriors, and you have done nothing to disappoint anyone. This matter has passed. To be honest, you don't have to prove anything. Just let everything flow with time. The current life is the most important." The orc army from Moria set out in advance. Gandalf, who escaped from Sauron, anxiously waited for the support of the White Council, and the dwarves went to Lonely Mountain in advance to start their actions. The rhythm of the music suddenly accelerated, just like Levi's footsteps. Something is wrong. At this speed, the army will rush over before the dragon is killed. The timeline is messed up. Why? As of now, the only change should be that I brought Gandalf out in advance, so that he was not imprisoned and tortured by Sauron. This also exposed Sauron's plan in advance perhaps. The Dark Lord sensed some kind of crisis, and he directly gave up his dormancy in preparation, and chose to march to Erebor immediately. On the plain at the border of the woodland, Levi stood on a high hill, looking at the dark mass of orcs in front of him. To be honest, the number is really a bit too much. I am afraid that not only the army from Moria, but also the scattered orcs in the nearby wilderness have been gathered here. That's... Levi squinted his eyes and saw a small team merge into the orc army. An orc who was tall among humans ran to Azog, stayed for a short while, and then joined the army. If I'm not mistaken, that should be Azog's son, Balk. Now this army has 2 generals, 1 master and 1 deputy. Stroking the sword in his hand, Levi felt itchy, and he suddenly remembered an old rumor. According to some legends, the holder of Orcrest was the Lord of the Well of Gondolin, Ecthelion. In the battle where Gondolin fell, he used Orcrest to cut the throats of thousands of orcs, and killed 2 orc leaders and 3 Balrogs in succession, and finally died together with the leader of the Balrog, Gothmog. From then on, the orcs would be terrified whenever they saw the sword, and would feel fear when they heard the name of the Lord of the Well. Even until now, 2 eras have passed, and the remaining power is still there. It has to be said that this elf lord of the First Age was really powerful. According to this rumor, he was even better at fighting than Levi now. Levi felt that he might not be unable to do what he did. It's a pity that it's not possible now. Looking at the huge army, Levi shook his head. If there were only a few hundred or 1,000, he could still give it a try, but tens of thousands of orcs, that number would definitely be able to surround him to death, and there would be no place to dig a hole. There is still a way to behead him, but whether it is worth it is another matter. Now is not the time. Compared with these, the more important thing is the Lonely Mountain. If we arrive earlier, we can make some preparations earlier. Thorin, who was far away in Long Lake Town, thought the same. At night, a group of dwarves sneaked out without telling Bard and went around to the back window of the armory under the cover of darkness. Thorin, isn't a bad idea for us to do this? Bilbo whispered. This is someone else's arsenal after all. There's no time to think about that, Mr. Baggins. Thorin took a sword from the arsenal, pulled it out, looked at it, and nodded. We're just borrowing some weapons temporarily. Besides, I have inquired about it. The reputation of the mayor and the guards of this town is really not very good. Taking these things can be regarded as a contribution to the townspeople. With a few words, the dwarves have completed their actions and each got a handy weapon. At this time, the night patrol team was about to arrive nearby, and Thorin hurriedly asked everyone to leave. In this way, a group of dwarves successfully got what they wanted and left without saying goodbye before dawn and went to Lonely Mountain. Only the next day, someone was unlucky because of their actions. Bard, a figure who looked a little smug, stood in front of the archer and called him with his head raised. Bard looked at him coldly. Alfred, do you have something to do? Yes, of course. Alfred clapped his hands, and a team of guards appeared behind him. A batch of weapons in the town was stolen. I suspect it was you or your accomplices who protected you. Now, please come with me to the prison and tell me in detail, Master Bard. Catch him, Alfred ordered leisurely. What? I didn't do these things. At this time, Bard had no idea what the dwarves had done. In his opinion, all this was just a reason made up by the mayor to get rid of him. Sooner or later, there'll be such a day. Alfred, Bard clenched his fists and suddenly called out his full name, which scared the deputy of Changhu Town. Bane, take care of the family. After telling his son, Bard followed the guards without resistance and left. This is an unavoidable man-made disaster. There is no point in escaping for a while. Let me see what tricks you have. Click. Levi took out a pickaxe, knocked on the gate of Lonely Mountain, and slipped in directly from the main gate. It is hard to imagine that this several-meter-thick stone wall could not stop Smaug. He just rushed forward and knocked down the heavy door easily without any hindrance. If you want to stop him, you must build a stone wall that is at least more than 10 meters thick. No, at least several dozen meters thick. If everything goes well, Smaug should still be napping in the deepest cellar. This is an opportunity. If he wants to get out, he must go through a very long tunnel, break into the conference hall, and reach the main entrance. In other words, in theory, as long as this section of the road can be blocked, Smaug can be trapped. Even if he can't be trapped to death, he can at least be trapped for a long time. Thinking of various ways in his mind, Levi walked forward quietly. As soon as he entered the door, his attention was deeply attracted by a huge golden dwarf statue. So much gold, if melted into liquid, can form a small river. If all of them were knocked down and turned into gold nuggets, they might be able to fill several large boxes. No wonder Smaug was stunned when he saw this statue for the first time. The wealth collected by the dwarves is indeed incomparable in this world. Shaking his head, Levi did not move the golden statue. You must know that in this world, it is very likely to cause trouble if you rashly move something that has an owner. Maybe no one can see what Levi did, but the world will silently record it all. There's a truth in everything. Beyond the conference hall with a huge golden statue, there's the corridor leading to Smaug's entrenched place. Levi stood at the end of the corridor, looking at the dark and spacious interior, and stopped. It can only be said that it is worthy of being a product of the dwarves. Just such a passage is at least several thousand meters long. After sighing for a few seconds, Levi took out a bucket of magma and a bucket of water, tiptoed to the highest point, and poured it down. The magma with red light extended infinitely downward unscientifically until it landed and extended a few meters outward before stopping. Then Levi poured another bucket of water on the side of the magma. With bursts of Zila sounds, the magma extending downward all turned into stone. In this way, The exit leading to the conference hall at the end of the passage was soon blocked, and a thick stone wall was built, as if a mountain wall fell out of thin air. Not enough. Digging up the floor, Levi buried all the TNT on his body and hit it with stones. This is all his inventory. I'll help you fix the terrain afterwards. After burying the TNT, Levi looked at the corridor again and fell in a deep thought. The bow and arrow trap couldn't be made. Even if it could be made, it would be useless. The lava trap was even more useless. This thing was just a bath for the fire dragon. It was a little hot at most, and it probably wouldn't even cause blood loss. What other traps can be made? Have you finished your little trick, human? It should be finished. Levi answered subconsciously. A huge feeling of heat came from behind. Hula. The scorching flames instantly engulfed Levi, and even the nearby stone walls were scorched, and the residual heat distorted the air. Fire resistance, 8 o'clock. The long sword was drawn out, and the remaining flames were lifted. Levi felt the horrible heat all over his body, took a breath of hot air, and felt a palpitation. Fortunately, he drank the medicine quickly and drank a bottle of fireproof potion in tons. I have to say that the push of the dragon's breath was really strong. If it weren't for the quick reaction, I would have been blown up to the sky. Oh, there are actually humans who are not afraid of fire. Deep in the passage, a huge movement came out, sweeping all the way to Levi. Boom! A hurricane hit, and in a blink of an eye, a body as big as a hill blocked the other side of the passage. The huge dragon head lowered down, staring at the tiny body below with one eye, and the pupil that was bigger than a human head was full of curiosity, so that it didn't even continue to do it. Is it you, the little bug that the Dark Lord mentioned? Do you think you can deal with me just by not being afraid of fire? Naive, haha. The dragon's mouth opened and laughed evilly. Levi took a quick look and estimated that this guy must be at least more than 100 meters long. This is the largest fire dragon in the Third Age, and also the last fire dragon. Are you smart? That's me, little bug. Why did you come here? For treasure? Something in the mountains? Or were you entrusted to be a snack for me? I've been waiting for you for a long time. But I really don't see that you, the person mentioned by the Dark Lord, are any different except that you are more resistant to burning. Maybe I'm not the person you said. What Dark Lord? I've never heard of it. Smog raised his head, lowered it again, and stared at Levi with another eye. You want to get the Great Smog's words? Don't think I don't know your plan. Who sent you here? Was it you? No, it's unlikely. You must have some purpose. You blocked the door because you were afraid that I would go out. Why were you afraid that I would go out? Are you worried about the human town outside? TSK. This chatterbox dragon is really smart. To be honest, I thought you were sleeping or dead. After all, there's been no news of dragons outside for a long time. Levi pretended to chat with this chatterbox dragon casually and quietly synthesized a pedal in his backpack. Well, I was sleeping a few days ago, but someone woke me up and offered me a very good deal. Guess what it is? Not interested, Levi said deliberately. But the more he didn't want to listen, the more Smog continued to say. He said that darkness will eventually sweep across the earth, and then I will be the king under the mountain who rules the entire north. But I heard that the king under the mountain is a dwarf. Hearing this, Smog immediately raised his body and showed his majestic body. Now, take a good look. Who is more suitable for this title? Levi raised his head and looked up, but he was not really looking at its body. His eyes swept around and finally stopped at the heart. In the dim passage, there was a small gap in the fine scales glowing with fire. In the gap was a hard diamond, which replaced the dragon scales and protected the skin below. I have to admit that you are really tall. You have good vision. If you say a few more nice words, maybe I can keep you alive. Don't dream of resisting, tiny human. Even those powerful warriors in ancient times were killed by me, and now there are no more people like them in the whole world. I was young and weak then, but now I'm extremely powerful. My scales are harder than 10 layers of thick steel shields. My teeth are like steel swords, claws are like spears, and my tail sweeps like thunder. The flap of my wings is a hurricane. Just my breath can bring death dash. What's your name, human? While boasting, the dragon suddenly lowered his head and asked Levi, You can call me Steve. It is impossible to say the real name. There are many creatures in Middle-earth who are born with some magic, and dragons are one of them. Levi knew clearly that this chatterbox dragon said so much not just because it was a chatterbox. Its words were magical and could seduce people, making it impossible for them to refuse its questions. The gaze of its dragon eyes was also a natural spell, which could make the person being stared at slowly obey its will and do what it said. If someone else had said so much to Smaug, he would have been dizzy, but Levi only felt it was noisy. However, the above could still be resisted as long as the will was firm, but there was only one special thing. If the person being questioned said his name, he would be immediately captured by the spell and become a slave of the dragon. Steve? I've never heard of it. Do you have any other names? It was still trying to continue to ask questions. There are so many. I'm afraid you won't be able to remember them all. Interesting human. Smaug narrowed his eyes. None of his spells actually worked. There was a faint glow in his abdomen and his mouth was slightly open. Just as Smaug was about to end the conversation and launch a despicable sneak attack, he suddenly heard the sound of chewing and swallowing. This human is eating and drinking at the same time? How bold! The dragon's breath almost rushed to his throat. At this moment, Levi suddenly drew out his long sword and swung it at the dragon head with all his strength. Clang! The huge metal collision sound echoed in the corridor, piercing people's ears. The huge dragon head was directly hit by this unexpected blow. The whole dragon retreated several steps and hit the wall with a loud boom. The sword was shining, and its powerful shock and dispersion ability made it Smaug, not Levi, who was repelled first by the huge force. As long as you use the sword method to deal with it, you will never bounce the knife. -2, 998/1000. This armor and blood are really thick. Levi couldn't help but sigh. This was the first time he felt how others felt when facing him. This was the damage under the blessing of the Strength 2 potion, and the dragon head with relatively thin scales was hit. Good news, there is a health bar. Bad news, it is too hard. Stinky Bug Dash, you pissed me off. His abdomen suddenly became blindingly bright, and a deep red dragon breath spurted out from Smaug's mouth again, enveloping everything around him. The sight was full of flames, with nowhere to hide. This dragon breath lasted for a long time, until the stone behind him showed signs of melting, and then it slowly stopped. However, no matter how Smaug attacked, Levi just calmly stepped on the flames, and his nether alloy armor was still cold. What? This time Smaug was really a little shocked. He was not afraid of ordinary flames, but he was not afraid of the extremely high-temperature flame breath with a little magic attached. Even if he was not afraid of fire, the impact should have caused some damage. In the past, this breath would have even washed away the stone houses in Dale City. You really surprised the dragon a little. +1. In just a few words, the dragon's life was restored to full. There's something even more unexpected. Seeing that the damage caused by the long sword was really limited, Levi put down the pedal on the spot, and immediately there was a sound of something being ignited under the floor. The TNT buried in advance was triggered. What is that? Smaug asked in confusion, and then he saw that Levi had dug a small passage behind him and disappeared in the blink of an eye. You burrowing rat. Not knowing the meaning of the incomprehensible sound, Smaug was even more angry that this human being could actually slip away from under his nose. And just now, he was beaten and even broke his defense. It was a great shame and humiliation. Come back. The evil dragon roared, its belly swollen red again, and the accumulated dragon breath was about to spray out along the hole. Boom! There was an explosion, and a large crater several meters wide was blown out of the floor. Then a large amount of TNT flew out of the ground due to the force of the impact and scattered in all directions. Some exploded on the spot, causing Smaug to raise his claws and jump around. Some flew to the dome and blew up the rocks above. The dragon's head was unable to be lifted up. Some were more fierce and flew directly to Smaug and exploded. It was so dizzy from the shock that it moved to the left, then to the right, unable to maintain its balance at all. Ha! Dash! The ubiquitous violent explosions and falling stones forced Smaug to shrink up, retract the membranes on his wings, and lie down on the spot with his head curled up to defend with all his strength. Levi was in the conference hall, listening attentively to what was happening behind the wall. The explosion didn't last long. After all, Levi's total savings only amounted to a few sets of TNT, which seemed like a lot in his backpack. In fact, it couldn't even be spread on the floor if it was put down, so it was all blown up in a short time. However, the destructive power is not small. Is it done? Levi quietly slipped back along the dug hole, peeking out half of his head to look around. All you can see are large pits and broken walls and rubble that have been blown down. There are also some marks on the left and right walls that have been hit by giant objects. Where's the dragon? After breaking open a piece of gravel, Levi walked in, took out a torch, and lit it forward. In the silence, a hill made of gravel appeared in front of him. I don't know if it was an illusion, but the hill was actually undulating. Tiny but steady. Some bad premonition occurred, and Levi took a few steps back until he reached the entrance of the cave. Wow! Or revenge! I want revenge! Suddenly, the stones piled on the ground were arched by huge objects and flew in all directions. Smaug stretched out his huge body from among them and roared, "Death, all die! Despicable humans! I will bring death to you!" Boom! The furious dragon slammed into the wall ferociously, and the huge impact shook the rock, causing Levi on the other side of the wall to sway and almost lose his balance. Boom! Boom! The giant dragon cursed and struck angrily, but no matter how it rushed forward, the wall was just there, standing still, always blocking its way. How was that possible? How thick is this wall? Smaug suddenly stopped, his eyes widening. Something's wrong. It doesn't look like a temporary barrier. If it were just a wall a few meters thick, it would have collapsed at the first impact, not to mention hitting it so many times. This wall doesn't look like a wall, but like a mountain falling from the sky across here. Don't try too hard. You can't hit it. At the entrance of the small 2-meter-high cave, Smaug saw the figure that made him feel extremely angry. He immediately exhaled dragon breath and passed away, not wanting to listen to the man at all. However, when the dragon's breath passed by, the figure was still there, looking quite comfortable, as if it was just a breeze. Crunch! The big mouth opened unexpectedly and lurched forward. Levi quickly dodged and knocked the dragon's head aside with a backhand sword, which made Smaug's head buzz. Big momentum, little harm. The explosion just now didn't even damage Smaug's dragon scales. It looked powerful, but in fact the total damage was only over 100. For a dragon of Smaug's size and hardness, the damage caused by the TNT explosion may be similar to that of firecrackers. In fact, let alone Smaug, even Levi himself barely lost any health when he resisted TNT as long as he was not in the center of the explosion. 18 points of damage was hit on its head, and only 2 drops of blood were deducted. Hundreds of continuous explosions of dozens of damage were not even able to blow off a single scale. This armor value is definitely higher than that of nether alloy. If the dragon scales can be deducted, it would definitely make a strong set of armor. Just as he was greedy for the material on Smaug, Levi also had a little headache. It seems that it can't be defeated without some technology or hard work. But if technology can't really be achieved for the time being, then we'll have to do hard work. You can't trap my despicable human, Steve. The Dark Lord army has set off. They will help me out of trouble. Then it will be the end of all of you. I have memorized your scent. You can't escape. I will hunt you down forever, forever. Boom! The mountain shook again. Far away in the narrow prison in Long Lake Town, Bud suddenly woke up and looked out through the bars. What sound? People were still coming and going and making noises in the town, but no one noticed the vibration coming from far away, or even if a few sensitive people noticed it, they didn't care. We have lived here for so many years, and everyone is doing well. So what big surprise could there be? Bang, bang, bang. Bud shook the sturdy door, feeling anxious. Did you hear that? On the secret path behind the solitary mountain, the dwarves suddenly stopped. I heard it. It was a sound coming from deep in the mountain. Balin put his ear against the rock. The next moment, boom! Balin closed his eyes and moved his head away. That almost deafened my ears just now. Boom! The mountain shook again, and small stones slid down. What happened? The dragon, it must be the dragon. It's awake. What's going on inside? Did we come here in vain? The dwarves were a little panicked. Smaug woke up. So how could the plan go on? Quiet, Thorin shouted, forcing everyone to calm down. In fact, he was the most panicked now, but as a leader, the emotion he could not show the most was frustration. Even if he was blindfolded, he had to pretend to be confident. We still have time. There is no need to draw conclusions so early. We have experienced so much and walked for so long. Are we going to retreat now, without even opening the door? Just because we are afraid of that damn dragon. We are the sons of Durin. Our goal is to recapture Erebor and revive our homeland. We will never give up until we achieve our goal. We have never doubted you, Thorin. Balin was the first to stand up, followed by the dwarves with bright eyes. We will follow you to the death. But what happened inside? We can't rush forward without even understanding the situation. Faced with everyone's suggestions, Thorin closed his eyes, thought for a while, and took a deep breath. Keely, I'll give you the key and the map. You wait here. I'll leave for a while. If everything goes well, I'll be back before Durin's Day. Thorin stuffed the things to Keely, turned around, and ran to the foot of the mountain. Where are you going? Keely asked blankly with the key in his hand. Go to the main gate. The sound came from there. I'll find out what happened. Thorin gripped the sword at his waist and walked to the foot of the mountain. This dwarf, who only had the title of king but never sat on the throne, has been tortured to the point of madness by the obsession of regaining his homeland. He finally has some hope. If he fails, it will be worse than death. Bilbo touched the ring in his pocket and shouted, Thorin, I can. Thorin, we will go with you. Holding Bilbo's shoulders, a group of dwarves stepped forward and protected him behind them. We are just like you, Thorin. We will only choose one of success and death in battle. We're almost there, don't make any noise. At the main entrance of Lonely Mountain, Thorin walked in front, approaching quietly with a group of dwarves. I remember the way here. Follow me. Why is there a cave here? Halfway through the way, Thorin frowned suddenly. It has never appeared in my memory. Well, I think I may have seen it, of course, in other places. Don't you think the style of this cave is a little familiar? A dwarf mentioned it. Is it Levi? Let's go in. Without hesitation, Thorin drew his sword, rushed to the front first, and walked into the meeting hall. Boom! The faint sound of collision and impact came from somewhere inside, occasionally mixed with a few dragon roars and flames. No way. Someone vaguely guessed what was going on inside. The group listened to the movement and approached again until a very abrupt stone wall appeared in front of them. That's not in my memory either. Thorin shook his head slowly. I remember this is the corridor leading to the cellar. It has never had such a wall, and it's this color. The same color as Levi's wall. Both are reminded. Look at the puddle here. It's just 2 meters long and 2 meters wide. I can almost be sure who did it. A dwarf squatted in front of the puddle and dipped his hand in it. The water was so clear that only the fountains made by the elves could compare with it. There is a cave over there, too. After discovering the passage again, the dwarves gave up their exploration of other places and surrounded the cave entrance. Someone poked his head over and saw that it was pitch black inside, with no light source, and it seemed that there seemed to be some gravel at the end. Do you want to go in? Thorin nodded and was about to lead the way forward. Suddenly, a red light lit up from the end of the cave. The alarm bells in his heart rang wildly. Thorin immediately rolled to the side and shouted, Back off! Cool up. The flames poured out from the cave and went out in an instant. A dwarf walked a step slower and had his beard singed. You can't kill me. The roar of the dragon came, followed by a series of huge noises. Go in and take a look. Thorin couldn't help it and rushed in immediately. This is the voice of the dragon. Hurry up, follow. The dwarves followed closely. Whoosh! A flaming arrow pierced Smaug's eyes fiercely, but it didn't even break the eyelids, let alone ignite the fire dragon. Obviously, neither the flame attachment nor the fire arrow can work on this fire dragon. After all, it is a fire dragon. Moreover, just as Smog himself said, its dragon scales are harder than 10 layers of steel shields, and the armor value is even higher than the upper limit. It is not pierced by ordinary bows and crossbows. The only weakness is the small gap where a scale is missing at the heart, but Levi has almost used up half of the bow's durability, and he couldn't even shoot down the diamond stuck on it, let alone cause any damage. You really scared me, Steve. I almost thought you were a powerful warrior from the ancient era. You may know some magical magic, but compared with those people in my memory, it's still far behind. Ah, your sword may be good, but it's a pity that you are the user, and your strength is not even half of the warrior I killed that year. Smog said sarcastically. While fighting, he did not forget to use his chatterbox attribute. Obviously, he has not given up trying to influence Levi with dragon language. You seem to have said too much. If I were you, shut your stinky mouth, or I'll stab you with my sword, and you'll never be able to open your mouth again. An arrow wrapped in flames suddenly shot out, and Smog bit it and swallowed it. This snack tastes good. Do you have more? Dang. Levi, who was so angry, chopped Smog's big claws with his sword, making it jump back, obviously feeling pain. Despicable human. A man and a dragon fought again, and the sound and vibration of metal collisions continued in the dark corridor. Since discovering that Levi seemed to be immune to fire, Smog rarely spit out dragon breath. Occasionally, he still spit out of habit. More often, he attacked by hitting and biting. The teeth that shone with metallic luster like steel swords and the claws like spears were very harmful. A big mouth biting Levi's armor could even make him lose blood. Whether it was biting, claw piercing, or tail sweeping, they could indeed shake Levi's health bar, but that was all. Compared with Sauron, the strength of these attacks was still too light. He didn't even need to take medicine. He only needed to eat ordinary food to maintain his fullness, and he could cope with it by relying on natural blood recovery and a little movement and dodging. In contrast, Smog's health was slowly and steadily decreasing at an imperceptible speed. Although Levi's health would also decrease, it would always come back, but Smog's health had not been positive for a long time. If he could keep grinding like this, let alone chop it to death, he only needed to find an opportunity to block its retreat, and then it would be a dead end, but it was still a bit difficult to do this. I have to admit that you have some skills. As the fight went on, Smog changed his strategy. He no longer chased Levi blindly, but moved around and adopted a guerrilla strategy. Smog is a real living thing after all, with his own thoughts. He is not one of those NPCs in the game that only follow fixed logic to act. He can only chase the player and attack, and he can't do anything to the player just by building a high place and blocking the position. When it senses danger, it will run and hide. When it can't take advantage, it will temporarily retreat. When it seems that it can't kill Levi at once, it will try other strategies slowly, instead of just using one mode to deal with it mechanically. The dragon language spell that has been lingering in my ears is the best example. Even if the spell doesn't work, trash talk can affect the opponent's mentality. My king, am I dreaming? At this time, a group of dwarves suddenly appeared at the entrance of the cave, and there was a hobbit surrounded in the middle. Levi is fighting with that giant dragon that's over 100 meters long. They look evenly matched. Seeing the scene in front of them, the dwarves were once again impressed by the fighting power shown by Levi. This guy is simply stronger when facing a stronger opponent. His specific fighting power is unknown. Even Bilbo opened his mouth wide, not knowing how to describe it. This scene has exceeded his cognition. However, there is still one exception. Compared to these, I am more concerned about why he woke up the dragon. This has disrupted all our plans. Thorin felt a little annoyed and puzzled. Didn't they agree to steal the gems and gather the army to attack again? Why did they do it in advance? Look what I smell. That's the smell of dwarves. Huh. Levi turned around suddenly and found that there was a group of guys staying at the entrance of the cave. He immediately felt something was wrong. Go back. Along with his shout, there was also a dragon's breath. Although the incident happened suddenly, the dwarves' reaction was not covered. They pulled Bilbo and scattered, rolling or jumping, and dodged the attack in an unsightly way. Let's go. After placing a bucket of water on the wall and extending it down to form a water curtain for protection, Levi quickly pulled the dwarves back and returned to the conference room. "Why are you here?" In the huge and empty conference hall, ignoring Smog, who was angrily scolding Coward on the other side of the wall, a group of people from the expedition team held a small meeting here. "I should be the one to ask you this, Levi. Why are you here?" Thorin asked. "You shouldn't be so reckless and wake up the dragon in advance. This is different from what we agreed. You almost caused our expedition to fail by doing this, and the keys and maps my father left behind were all in vain." Levi shook his head and talked about what he had seen. "No, Thorin, this method no longer works. Your information is out of date. Smog has long been united with the enemy. Do you remember the necromancer that Gandalf said? He is the enemy of the free people of Middle-earth, the Dark Lord, Sauron. He has been in contact with Smog a long time ago and reached cooperation. In fact, this dragon has always been awake. It is dormant underground pretending to sleep, just waiting for you to come to your door." Hearing this, the anger on Thorin's face froze, slowly dissipated, and turned into an expression of disbelief. Seeing Thorin's expression, Levi continued to add, "Also, now Moria and the Oaks and Wargs of the Misty Mountains have formed a coalition and are heading here, with tens of thousands in number. They will swarm Smog and become the new king under the mountain, completely occupying this area. No, I'm the real owner here." Thorin couldn't help but say, "That's why we have to find a way." Silently digesting this information, Thorin took a breath and said, "Now that the dragon has awakened, we must face it. I declare the original plan to be cancelled. We must kill the orc army before it arrives, otherwise everything will be irreversible. And I have to seek support from my relatives immediately." Thorin analyzed the situation clearly immediately and decisively set new goals. "Barain, do you remember how to make explosive bombs?" "Well, although it has been a long time since I last made something like this, I think I will remember it when I get to the processing room." "Very good. We can go over here and go to the processing room to make some explosive bombs, use that thing to attract Smog's attention, lead him to the furnace, and then use his favorite gold to crush him and kill him in one fell swoop." After finishing the rough plan, Thorin explained it in detail. Basically, he was going to lead Smog to a specific location, then pour in a massive amount of hot liquid metal, and after solidification, he would be completely trapped inside. After hearing Thorin's plan, the dwarves felt that it was very interesting and they could give it a try. But at this time, Levi shook his head. "No, high temperature is of no use to it. I tried it with magma. It's a little hot at best. Your method won't work. It will crawl out. Then what do you think we should do? Just watch it join the army and let a beast become the king of the mountain." "Calm down, Thorin," Balin suddenly said. "Maybe there is another way. What can I do? Listen to me. I have heard another rumor about the destruction of Riverdale City. The Lord of Riverdale City actually shot the dragon. Although he failed to kill it, he successfully removed a scale from the dragon's heart. Knock it off. If we can use the same black arrow to aim at that position and hit it again, it will definitely kill it." Balin said affirmatively, and at the same time looked at Levi, wanting to hear Levi's advice. The rumors are true. Levi looked a little strange, but he still helped to prove. "I saw with my own eyes that Smog was indeed missing a scale from his heart. But the Lord of River Valley City has been dead for many years. Where can we find a sharpshooter who can hurt the dragon?" A dwarf asked. "Some," Balin affirmed. "Actually, we have met him." This wise old dwarf told the story of his conversation with Bard, which made the dwarves look at me in surprise. In other words, there is another magic item called the Black Arrow, and it is now in the hands of the descendants of the former Lord of River Valley City. That person is Bud. Thorin listened silently and suddenly turned around. "Levi, can you please watch this dragon here and wait for us for a few days? We'll be right back." "Of course, I can wait for you. In the meantime, that annoying dragon won't go anywhere. By the way, I just heard you talking about the processing room. Is there a lot of gunpowder in it?" "Yes. Do you need the materials there? I can tell you the specific route. No need for directions. Just tell me the straight direction." With all the twists and turns, there's no way to save trouble by just digging through. After pointing out a specific direction and distance to Levi and confirming that there was nothing else to do, the dwarves left in a hurry. Bilbo hesitated for a moment and chose to follow the dwarves. They needed him more than Levi. The sun rises and the moon sets. Changhu Town, in front of the prison. Alfred raised his head, looked down at Bud from the window, and said strangely, "Look at our people's fighter, how embarrassed he is now. The people loved and supported you, but you failed their expectations and joined forces with the thieves to help them steal the town's property. This behavior is simply despicable. Just wait, Bud. The people will soon abandon you and curse you, and your conspiracies will no longer threaten anyone." "I'm not the one with the conspiracies." Bud clutched the iron window tightly, his face gloomy. "If you want to accuse someone, you can always find a pretext. This is just a trumped-up excuse. They have been staring at their lives for a long time. Maybe, anyway, you'll never figure it out. This is your final ending." Alfred fiddled with the key in his hand, deliberately shook it in front of Bud twice, looked at his increasingly gloomy face, smiled triumphantly, turned around, and prepared to leave. Boom! Suddenly a dull blow sounded, and Alfred rolled his eyes and fainted on the spot. Click! The lock of the prison was opened. Bard lowered his head unexpectedly and saw a group of fully armed dwarves. Bard, the former lord of the valley, the descendant of Girion. Now there's an opportunity to prove your family's ancestry. Do you want to seize it? Old Balin, who was good at communication and had a good impression in Bard's eyes, was pushed to the front and talked to the archer. At this time, a boy squeezed through the dwarves and came to Bard. "Father." "Bane." Bard hugged his son and asked, "Why are you here?" "They said they were coming to save you, but they needed someone to lead the way." Sensing Bard's gaze, Balin praised sincerely. "That's right. Your son is very outstanding. He takes good care of the family and is very decisive. He always remembers where you are imprisoned." Bard looked at the dwarves with a complicated expression, then looked at his son and sighed softly. "I know. In fact, I have no choice at all, right?" The prison door was locked again, and Alfred, who was lying on the ground, was thrown in. Before leaving, the dwarves picked up some garbage to block the window so that people outside could not see clearly what was going on inside. Perfect. A group of people sneaked back to Bard's house and took the black arrow. This is simply a heavy spear. I don't think an ordinary bow can shoot it. We need to use the wind crossbow in the center of town. Bard raised his head and looked into the distance, and the dwarves followed him. "That is a big killer. I can see it. Are we going to lure the dragon here?" "No, that would be too much of a loss to Long Lake Town." "Borrow from the mayor? Do you think he will lend us the wind crossbow based on the reputation of the people in this place?" "Damn it. Who are the people who control this place?" "If you ask me, wouldn't it be better to take it away directly?" "Yes, take it away." "Just do it. Let's go." Wait. There are many guards in the center of town." Bard hurriedly stopped. "We can wait until night. There are only a few patrols at night, and there's a large gap. We have plenty of time to take it away." "There is no time, Uncle Bard." Thorin looked at him and said, "We can wait, but the dragon can't wait. It is now thinking about coming out to wipe out everyone. The sooner this happens, the better. Moreover, no matter how many guards there are, they can't stop the determined dwarves." That's fine. As soon as they said it, following the route provided by Bard, the dwarves came to the bottom of the sentry tower equipped with wind crossbows. The residents around looked curiously, especially when they saw Bard. Some people showed a little surprise. "Bard, you're not caught." "Shoo, I have something important to do." The residents looked at each other, exchanged glances, and began to take the initiative to cover Bard. "The guard are coming." "On my stall." Just as the guards were about to come over, a resident screamed and accidentally knocked down his stall, blocking the road. "Oh my God, how long will it take me to clean up?" "I'll help you." The residents around spontaneously came over and gathered together to help the resident who accidentally knocked over the stall to clean up, but after waiting for most of the day, they still couldn't clean up. Until the guards began to get impatient and were ready to do it themselves, the group of people dispersed and went to do their own things. The guards continued to patrol and did not find anything unusual. In the sentry tower, 2 unconscious soldiers were lying on the haystack and were covered, and the dwarves had already climbed up. But such a big crossbow, how can we take it away? Bard really couldn't think of how to carry this thing down. Looking at the size and material of the crossbow, it would be difficult to lift it without 4 or 5 strong men. You underestimate the dwarves too much. It was built with our technology, and of course it can be disassembled with our technology. In this dwarf team, there are relatively few professional warriors, and there are more craftsmen. But at this time, the craftsman was more useful. Soon, this wind crossbow, which was bigger than a whole dwarf, was dismantled into a pile of parts of different sizes, which were carried by the dwarves. It's time to go. The dwarves took action at the same time. At the prison, a man knocked on the door, frantically shouting, open the door for me." The guards passing by heard the shouting in the prison and shouted on the spot, saying, "Stop shouting. Without the order of the mayor, you will never get out. You idiots, you don't even know that the honorable deputy of Changhu Town is in prison here. Open the door and let me out." The guards quickly poked the garbage stuck on the iron window down, and when they looked inside, there was indeed a familiar face with swollen eyes. The prison door opened immediately. Quick, catch Bard, the reactionary guy, escaped from prison. Under Alfred's order, Changhu Town immediately entered a state of alert, and the guards were dispatched in large numbers, shuttling through the town. However, no matter how hard they searched, they could not find the person they were looking for. Instead, they encountered many obstacles along the way. Either the potted plants in this flower shop fell down, or the nets of that fisherman were lying across the road. After walking for a while, there would be some obstacles which made the guards very uncomfortable. Until dark, the guards could not find Bard. Long ago, he had already left the town smoothly with the dwarves. "Brother Bard, it seems that I still underestimated your influence." On the way, Balin talked to the respected sharpshooter. "I think with your reputation, you can overthrow the corrupt mayor at any time if you want, and you don't even need to do it. The people will spontaneously push you up." "Maybe." Bard shook his head, not knowing what he was thinking. "The dragon-slaying weapon is on its way to Lonely Mountain, but Levi will not put all his hopes on this. Even if there is no black arrow, a must-kill item in Destiny, it is not impossible to kill a cunning dragon that likes to run around at any time." Following the route provided by Thorin, Levi soon dug into the processing room without Smog noticing. As soon as he entered, Levi opened his eyes wide. With this material reserve and this richness of props, at this moment, Levi was even happier than a mouse in an oil tank. Synthesis added, flare bomb. In the processing room, Levi successfully saw the explosive bomb mentioned by the dwarves, but it was just some semi-finished products and shells. But this was enough for Levi to unlock its synthesis. After a rough look, the power of the flare bomb is quite good, with 8 points of damage and a small splash range. In terms of power, it is far inferior to TNT. However, it also has advantages. That is, it is thrown and explodes as soon as it lands, which is much more convenient than TNT, which needs to be placed and ignited and waits for several seconds before exploding. Moreover, it requires less materials than TNT, and 1 gunpowder can synthesize a bomb. In addition, the flare bomb has a special buff, blinding. If you open your eyes and face it directly when it explodes, you will be blinded for a few seconds and can't see anything clearly. In this way, this thing is still good and has some uses, which is equivalent to the Middle-earth version of the flash bomb. After making some flare bombs and storing them in his backpack, Levi opened the material box next to him and took a look. Sulfur, saltpeter, carbon powder, and some pre-mixed gunpowder. Everything needed to make bombs. They are all here. Moreover, since it is an important processing site for dwarves, there is not only gunpowder, but also a lot of other raw materials piled up. As long as you want to find some, you can basically find some, including sand and paper. Yes, there's also paper. As the old saying goes, paper cannot cover fire, but it can cover gunpowder. With a huge reserve of materials, Levi directly made a lot of TNT, flare bombs, and some fireworks for experiments. Sometimes, some things seem useless just because they haven't found their correct use. Just like fireworks. In my world, fireworks are actually harmful, but usually they are placed in the sky and cannot explode the enemy at all. However, there is a way to correct its trajectory, and that's with a crossbow. By loading fireworks on a crossbow, you can make it launch in a straight line in the direction you want. It will not explode until it hits something or flies to the maximum distance. The explosive power of fireworks is directly proportional to the number of firework stars or gunpowder filled in it. It can reach a maximum of more than a dozen points. It is similar to the power of an arrow shot from Lee Wyman's Enchanted Bow. However, it is a range of splash damage, and the benefits are greater. For weak creatures without armor, this thing may still have some lethality, but for dragons whose armor is thicker than netherite. Are you celebrating me? You seem to be talking too much. Levi put away the flash bombs and firework crossbow, drew his sword and slashed Smog's claws, and followed the hole out with its melodious, angry roar. Recording experiment. Fireworks. The maximum damage is similar to that of a fully enchanted bow. It is a range attack like the flare bomb, and consumes several times more materials than the flare bomb. Neither of them could penetrate the dragon's armor, but judging from Smog's expression and level of anger, the fireworks should still have some effect and cannot be considered ineffective. It is rated as suitable for use against targets with relatively low armor, such as orcs or wargs. The range of flash bombs mainly depends on arm strength, while the range of firework rockets depends on the amount of gunpowder loaded, ranging from 30 meters to 70 meters. It is not too far, but it is also useful. If the soldiers can be equipped with equipment, the salvo scene should be very good. In the corridor, Smog stared closely at the 2-block-high hole, waiting for the human, with some rock fragments ready behind its body. After being attacked by Levi many times and then running away, the dragon finally became wiser. It planned to wait for the next time the human came out and quickly block the entrance of the hole with big rocks, not giving him a chance to get out. However, what Smog didn't know was that Levi had the same idea as it. At this moment, Levi was digging behind the corridor, intending to block Smog's retreat so that he would know what a trapped beast is. In less than a day, without Smog noticing, many of the paths leading to the cellar were completely blocked. At this moment, Smog still doesn't know that it will never return to the treasure house full of gold. Just when Levi completed the road-blocking project and arrived at the conference hall again with full combat readiness, ready to take a few bottles of medicine to kill the boss who had nowhere to escape, a group of dwarves burst in panting. Wait, don't go yet. No need. The note of the event is reversed. We're back, Levi, It looks like we've caught up. The dwarves stopped the aggressive Levi, put down a lot of parts with sweat, and collapsed to the ground. Many of them were so thirsty that they took out their water bags and drank. Among them, Bomber lay directly next to the unlimited water and started drinking. After a while, he almost fell into it. Drink slowly. Levi carried the dwarf, who was well balanced in length and width, back to prevent him from falling into the puddle. What a surprise. I thought you would have to wait a few days to come back. I had already thought about what to do with the dragon meat. Since we left, we haven't dared to stay for a moment or rest for a second. Balin said weakly. The stamina of the dwarves is already low. If they had been running at full speed since they left, it would be a hard work for them not to die from exhaustion. Not to mention old Balin and Fat Bomb. Even Thorin, who was the strongest, was too tired to talk at the moment and had no energy to fall ill. I can't let you do anything, right? Look, we brought back everything we need to restrain that dragon. This will definitely help you. The dwarves made a way to show Levi the human behind him, who was always frowning and barely letting go. The man had a long bow on his back and a huge black arrow like a spear in his hand. Good guy, I just kidnapped someone here. Are you the legendary warrior, Levi? Before Levi could speak, Bud spoke first. You know me? No, we have never met before, but I have heard of you. Changhu Town received some refugees a few months ago. They chanted your name and told your story. Legend has it that the black-armored warrior wandering around the Anjuin Valley, The sword in his hand could ignite fire, making all the orcs he saw frightened. He faced the ferocious orcs and wargs alone, and worked with a wise wizard to save them. People on both sides of the river. "Greetings, I'm Bud from Lake Town." Bard bowed, actually quite surprised that the dwarves had never said they knew the rumored man. "If you had told me earlier, I would have helped you." Although his overall impression of the dwarves was not very good, Bard showed considerable respect for his fellow dwarves who had actually saved many people. "Greetings, Bud. I think you should know the purpose of our trip. The dragon is inside now." Levi pointed to the hole in the far wall, and Bard couldn't help but look over there, and took 2 steps closer out of curiosity. "No, I suggest you don't go there. This dragon's curse words are very unpleasant. If you don't want to get your ears dirty, don't get too close." Smog was still speaking, and his voice was truly a golden one. He couldn't help but feel pain after talking for so long. "What do we do now? Assemble the wind crossbow, go in and shoot the dragon to death. But we only have one chance, and this arrow must hit its heart." Everyone looked at Bud. "I will." There was no fear in the archer's eyes, as if this was just an ordinary hunt. Levi looked at the marksman and nodded. Bard's quality can still be trusted, let alone a locked-up dragon, even a fire-breathing dragon flying in the sky. As long as it threatens the townspeople, this guy will dare to rush up and attract it with ordinary bows and arrows. "It's attention. I have a plan." After resting for a while, Thorin suddenly spoke up. "There's a secret passage beyond the corridor, just big enough for the dragon to dive in. If it wants to go in, it must expose its chest, and once it goes in, it can't go back. We can place the wind crossbow at the end of the passage to attract it, and then it depends on our marksman." Thorin raised his head and looked at Bard, and said seriously, "If this operation is successful, I can give you a promise, the king's promise. You can make any request, as long as it does not involve the dwarves' bottom line." Bard glanced at Thorin and nodded. "I hope you're not like your grandfather." Thorin was startled, clenched his fists, and said nothing, but his expression was obviously much gloomier. No one cared about this little gesture. Soon, 13 dwarves, 2 humans, and 1 hobbit gathered in a circle to discuss the specific details. Levi asked about the direction of the secret passage and suddenly clapped his hands. "Oh, the direction leading to the secret passage you mentioned is blocked by me, but it doesn't matter. I will remove it later." "Blocked?" Thorin couldn't understand this statement at first. How could such a big secret passage be blocked? But when he caught sight of the huge stone wall blocking the entrance to the conference hall from the corner of his eye, he felt relieved. That can indeed be blocked. That's good. Thorin chose to obey and no longer try to understand what Levi was saying, as long as the result was correct. However, the key to this plan is to have a bait. This person should be agile and able to flexibly cross various terrains, and his stature should not be too tall. Otherwise, he may not be able to pass through many dwarf-specific passages. After all, there is a giant dragon chasing behind him. If he gets knocked or tripped, it will be dangerous. It's not just about multiple wounds. The one among us who best meets these requirements. Bilbo looked around, took a deep breath, and squeezed forward. I think it's me." Thorin pressed Bilbo's shoulders and pushed him back. "That evil dragon has a blood feud with me. You are not attractive to a dragon, Bilbo. He will not be upset over a hobbit he has never seen. Levi can't do it either. He can fight the evil dragon head-on. If he suddenly runs away, it will definitely make it suspicious." Thorin stood in the middle of the crowd. "Only me. I am the true heir to the throne of Durin, and will eventually return to become the king under the mountain. Only me. It will kill at all costs and will not give up any opportunity. Only I can make it lose its mind." Thorin's eyes flashed with madness. All this was seen by Levi. Yes, what he said is indeed correct, but the opposite is also true. This giant dragon will also make the heir to the dwarf throne lose his mind. From the moment he stepped into the lonely mountain, Thorin has been getting closer and closer to madness. The closer he gets, the curse that exists on this land has tightly entangled him. When he actually sits on the throne, his greedy nature may even surpass that of the evil dragon. In this case, Let the madness be thorough. Levi's fists and milk have been prepared for a long time. Levi, what do you think? After the plan was finished, Thorin asked the usual question, just like they would ask Gandalf before. Just go ahead and do it. Levi replied in the affirmative, and by the way, guided the dwarves to go around the corridor from the passage he had dug before, and successfully completed the assembly of the wind crossbow. At the end of the secret passage, Bard looked at the well-made and even refurbished wind crossbow in front of him, as well as the black arrow in his hand, took a few deep breaths, and waited quietly. You fire-breathing maggot! Suddenly, there was a loud curse from the other side of the passage. Smaug's first reaction was that the hateful Steve was here again, but when he turned around, he was stunned for a moment, and then gave a meaningful, evil smile. Look who this is! Isn't this the last heir to the throne of the cowardly Durin clan, Thorin Oakenshield? Why? Are you tired of wandering around doing dirty work for others and finally want to die? Smaug gave up guarding the hole in front of him and slowly approached Thorin. Every step his huge body moved made Thorin feel a clear shock. However, he just stared at the dragon, motionless like a real stone. You think you can drive away the great Smaug by finding a warrior who doesn't know where he is? You coward and scum among the dwarves. What did you say? You're a fat, slow-moving, old, dizzy-headed worm. Thorin finally used his talent for provocation in the right place. After being severely insulted from all aspects, the dwarf couldn't bear it anymore and continued to shout. You are a false usurper, a fat maggot who only hides in deep pits. You never know what is truly valuable. You have no identity and are not qualified to rule at all. I am the only one here. Only this orthodox king under the mountain is qualified to sit on the throne. Ha! Did you just come up with this theory? It's really fresh. As he spoke, Smaug gradually approached, preparing to slowly process the dwarf who had come to die. Bump! Suddenly, several flash bombs were thrown by Thorin and hit the dragon's eyes accurately, emitting a burst of violent white light and dust. However, neither the strong light nor the explosion could make the dragon's eyelids blink. It just made its stretched-out neck subconsciously retract a little. I've had enough of this tickling stuff. Why not try something new? His belly suddenly turned red, and Smaug suddenly breathed out a stream of fire. Thorin hurriedly rushed around the corner, running towards the smelter without stopping. When Smaug also crossed the corner and was about to spit out an enhanced dragon's breath, he heard Thorin shout, "Pull!" The dwarves who were ambushed in the dark pulled down the sluice, and suddenly, a huge stream of water gushes down from a high place, pouring on Smaug, extinguishing the fire that was waiting to explode in his belly. Good. You're starting to annoy me a little. Rumble. The dragon's pace quickened, a big head protruding in front, chasing Thorin's footsteps. At the end of the smelter, Thorin threw 2 flash bombs again, hitting the dragon's head accurately, slightly attracting Smaug's attention. Bang! A large iron door opened, and Thorin immediately slipped in to escape. At the same time, several huge rocks fell from behind where Thorin had just been standing, hitting Smaug hard on the head. You think you can hurt me like this? What a pity, I've also suffered from this trick. Why has it eaten everything? Philly, who had just put down the huge boulder at the height of the smelter, scratched his head. These methods were all just thought of. The cooperative attacks of the dwarves never took effect, but Smaug was tired of playing tricks. He rushed towards the door where Thorin had slipped away, folded his wings, and dived inside, with a reddened belly, just waiting to see the figure and strike hard. Yes, it was just playing from beginning to end. This giant dragon didn't think that the dwarves had any means to hurt it. If they had, they wouldn't have been driven out of the mountains by him in the first place. However, there is one thing that makes it unexpected. Coming. Wind and huge movement came from the entrance of the passage, impacting Bard's face. The huge shadow moved from far to near, and its claws like hard steel scraped the walls on both sides, and the evil dragon just swooped down. Another human? You think your weapons are useful? Subconsciously, Smaug began to use dragon language, trying to influence this human who smelled a little different. But Bud just stared at its belly from beginning to end, his eyes never wavering. At this moment, nothing other than the target could shake his concentration in the slightest. Finally, when Smaug reached a certain distance, he moved, but it was not the wind crossbow on the ground that was activated, but the longbow on his back. Whoosh! An ordinary arrow shot at Smaug. Almost at the same time, Bard pulled the trigger of the wind crossbow and shot out the spear-like black arrow. Snap! The ordinary arrow fired first accurately hit the diamond stuck in the middle of the scales, and bounced it away, revealing the skin underneath that was not covered by dragon scales. Almost at the same moment that the diamond was bounced away, the black arrow followed closely and pierced into Smaug's heart without leaving any room. Dash! Hot liquid like magma spurted out from his mouth, and with a crash, Smaug lost all his strength and opened his mouth with difficulty as if he wanted to say something, but judging from its angry expression, it would definitely not be a good thing. 900, 100/1000. Abnormal status. Massive bleeding, life suppression. It is indeed a special weapon against dragons, and the effect is quite good. After a successful blow, Bard quickly rolled over and threw himself into a 2-meter-high hole on one side to avoid the impact of the dragon swooping down. Levi! Bud yelled. I am here. While he was hiding in, Levi appeared from another hole. He drank a bottle of second-level strength potion, held a long sword, and jumped from a high place. At this moment, this giant dragon has almost no strength. It can only wave its claws randomly and scrape the wall with a rumble. What can be seen is that even if it is seriously injured and dying, it is still terrifying. It could just flutter a few times, a blow that no one can withstand. But no matter how it flutters, it can't avoid Li Wei's sword edge. Directly in front of the giant dragon, Li Wei slashed at it with sword after sword, giving the 100-meter-long dragon the final finish. At this moment, with each additional sword strike, Smaug will suffer higher damage. This is the bonus of dynamic sword skills. After locking the target, each additional combo strike will increase the next damage by 1 point, up to a maximum of 12 hits in a row. At this moment, Smaug could neither escape nor recover his life naturally. He could only resist Li Wei's attack. He would lose as much blood as Li Wei cut off, and he would not be able to recover at all. Finally, when the combo was full, Levi stabbed hard and dealt a sword that dealt up to 30 points of damage. Bite! The extremely fierce sword penetrated the gap between the mandibles with difficulty, cutting off the last life of the dragon head. The pupils lose their luster, and the limbs lose their strength. From then on, the fire dragons in Middle-earth were declared extinct. Prompts pop up one after another.